Good morning. It is 20 degrees under clear skies here in Westchester at the train station. It is Friday, December 20th, 2019. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the train station the radio station at the train station. I'll get it right one of these days. Welcome to the program. Again, it is Friday. It's December 20th, 5 days. You don't have a lot of time to get this all done. Welcome to the program. Our top stories this morning locally. A Somers bus driver drove drunk with kids on board and a 22% BAC. Wow. The new Mario Cuomo bridge toll has been proposed. Here's what it might be. A masked man ransacked a home. A bunch of masked men ransacked a home in Ramapo. A Westchester County legislator looks to make the jump to Congress. And the Isles win. The Nets lose. We're coming right back with the weather. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. Stay right there. We're going to share the weather with you. It is 20 degrees right now. It's a clear sky. It's going to get up to 33. Now, the weather is brought to you exclusively, pardon me, by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And as for the weather, it's sunny, going to be sunny all day with an average temperature of about 31 degrees. Tonight, a few clouds. The temperature will be 17. Cold again. It was cold yesterday. Saturday, a mix of sun and clouds. Temperatures averaging 33. It warms up a little bit. Then Sunday, sunny still. The high will be 44. Overnight, it won't even be freezing, 33. And we'll take you into Monday as we head towards Christmas. Mostly sunny skies. The high will be 50. And in case you're worried about Christmas Day already or Christmas Eve, sunny skies, temperatures around 50 on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas. Partly sunny, a high will be 43, so I can't promise you a right Christmas. Welcome to the program, and let's get to those local stories. Imagine your fifth grader calls from the bus. So says the story in Lohad, and tells you something is wrong with the bus driver, like a 22% blood alcohol content, but the children wouldn't necessarily know this. That's what parents at Somers Intermediate School faced back on December 9 when state police said one William J. Mendez was behind the wheel of a Royal Coach Lines bus. An investigation revealed the 61-year-old Mendez blood alcohol concentration to be 0.22%. That's 3 times, not twice, not once, 3 times the legal limit. And one Barbara Lloyd, court clerk at Somers, said Mendez was arraigned before town judge Dennis Damone on 2 charges. And wow, we have to be looking, obviously, at who we hire for these positions. It is 6:16. Pardon me. It's cold in here still. Not as bad as yesterday, though. The toll on the Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge may increase to $5.75. That's for Easy Pass users, by the way, and that's by 2022. Though residents of Westchester and Rockland who qualify would get a discount, maintaining the current $4.75 toll through then. So now you know. Those who pay by mail would pay more, an additional 30% plus a $2 surcharge on monthly bills. That begins on 2021. This happened yesterday. The Transit Authority formally proposed the increase at its meeting in Albany, potentially ending the years-long mystery of how much the toll would rise on the new $4 billion span. This out of News 12 this morning. Police are searching for the men who ransacked a home in Ramapo. They had ski masks on. They obviously weren't skiing. The masked men broke into the home on Cove Farm Road in Montebello, and it was all caught on the doorbell camera. Cameras everywhere these days. They say the break-in occurred around 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday. The house is most likely a secondary residence for its owners who weren't home at the time. Police say they have leads. And some neighbors are saying it isn't the first time this area has been targeted by crooks. Kind of a Home Alone thing. People who have some winter homes or people who go on vacation during the holiday. One wonders, where was Joe Pesci? Did he talk to them before they left. Continuing on at 6:17, Westchester County lawmaker Catherine Parker officially kicked off her campaign for Congress Thursday. The latest Democrat with hopes of replacing longtime Representative Nita Lowey, and now one among many. Parker, who formerly ran a travel shop in Rye for 23 years, said the time she has spent in local office has her prepared to make the jump to the federal government. And speaking of how many, there are at least 10 Democrats running for Lowey's seat, but Parker says experience counts a lot for her as someone on the county legislature. That's a big leap, folks, but we'll get her on, and she's a very able county legislator, but we'll get her on and see what is driving that decision. 6:18. This out of Lohud today, and it depends on what paper you read. If you read some papers, there was this big conspiracy about Epstein killing himself and having been killed by someone, and now a tape appears showing that indeed he did it. Let's get to that story, and this out of Lohud this morning. Video from sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein's first suicide attempt in a federal detention center has been found. The about face came a day after the judge was told the video was missing, a possible blow to the defense of former Briarcliff Manor police officer Nicholas Tartaglione, the financier's cellmate at the time, who is facing a death penalty in a quadruple homicide. Tartaglione's lawyer, Bruce Market, told U.S. District Judge Kenneth Karras on Wednesday that despite his urging, jail officials are at the troubled lockup Metropolitan Correction Center in Lower Manhattan, that they will preserve all evidence from the July 23rd incidents. You ever wonder what the Masons are planning for the former College of New Rochelle? Well, many do, and Lohud gave us, a bit of an answer this morning. The buyers of the College of New Rochelle told city officials they want to build senior housing and an educational facility there. But before the trustees of the Masonic Hall and Asylum Fund finalize plans, the city is encouraging them to meet next month with residents of the Residence Park neighborhood. New Rochelle Development Commissioner Louise Aragon, who confirmed the Masons' intention, said it's very much in flux at this point. They want to work with the city and community to determine exactly what use there is going to be. Now, representatives of the trustees haven't returned multiple phone calls to our colleagues at Lohud or answered emails, but they are known for operating a retirement and nursing care community in general. They bid, as you know, $32 million in November. Just a little commentary about the folks in Residence Park where I once hung my hat. They will not go quietly into that good night if they're not happy with the use. About 7 years ago, I covered a story there, and it had to do with whether or not it would be an historical neighborhood. So the official designation might have been. And I have only twice been nervous covering a news story in my 15 years doing this. Once was the dog park, and the other was when they felt that the people who were pushing for an historical society in Residence Park, and that designation would have controlled what they could do with their homes. My, I thought the people were going to take the building down and storm it afterwards. So the folks at the Masons, you have been warned. Those folks will not tolerate anything that they really don't like. You have no idea. And I've covered, like everyone else in this business, murders, all kinds of nefarious things, politics in Mount Vernon, enough to scare anybody, but nothing like the anger of the people at the dog park. That for another day. When that was built, that was nuts. But this is the second scariest thing that I ever covered. So think about that before you do anything untoward over there. I don't think they intend to, but just a word to the wise is sufficient, as my mom used to say. It is 6:22. Playing Santa Claus could soon require a mandatory background check. I didn't know it didn't. This in Lohud today, State Senator James Scoufis introduced a bill this week that specifically requires background checks for a person who would be employed as a children's character. A similar bill has not yet been introduced in the Assembly, however. The law would apply to would-be workers who dress as Santa, the Easter Bunny, or other child-centric characters. Employers will be mandated to run a person's name through child abuse and sex offender registries. Makes a lot of sense. And by the way, it makes you think of that now famous movie. Well, I think it's famous anyway, Bad Santa with Billy Bob Thornton. It is 6:23. Let's take a quick look at sports before we go into regional news and other stuff. Last night, I hope Tom from Pelham, we spent a long time talking with Tom yesterday, a guy with eclectic interests and tastes, but his most formidable, his passion for the New York Islanders. Well, his team came back from an 8-2 or whatever it was, drubbing 2 days before to defeat the, by record, the best team in hockey, the Boston Bruins, by a score of 3-2. So they have returned to their winning ways. Pardon me. Meanwhile, the New York Nets were defeated by the Denver Spurs by a score of 118 to 105. The Rangers and Devils played tonight. The Devils actually won 2 games in a row. The Devils fitting right in with the Jets and Giants for having just a horrendous season, but they fired their coach, something that neither the Jets nor the Giants did. The Knicks, let's see where the Knicks are scheduled to play. How did I miss that somehow? Well, that's tonight. They are at Miami. Well, at least the Knicks won't be cold as they head in to South Florida. A quick break to take a look at the weather, and then when we come back, we will look at regional news. Remember, you're listening to Radio Westchester, the station at the train station here in New Rochelle. For those of you just getting up, you can listen on radiowestchester.com. You can go to the podcast streaming services. We're on several of them, most prominently these days, MyTuner Radio. We are also on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Periscope, and I'd like to shout out some of the emails and texts we've been getting. People are listening as far away as Amman, Jordan, believe it or not. Calgary, Alberta. Welcome to the program, Calgary. I have a couple of listeners out there, probably through my hockey connections. Ohio, Los Angeles, down in Florida, and up in the great Northeast. So Minnesota as well, in the central part of the country. Thank you so much for listening. But this is our local weather as well. If you live in Minnesota, it's colder. If you're out in Amman, Jordan, it's warmer. If you're down in Florida, well, it's also warmer there. It's 20 degrees right now, and I'm double-checking the weather. It's going to get up to 33 today, above freezing, but sunny, and a lot of sun the next few days. Tonight, a few clouds. The temperature will be 17. The wind will be north out of the north-northwest, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and clouds, and just to give us a taste of the clouds, the temperature will be 33. Sunday, sunny, but getting up to 44, a balmy 44, the overnight low 33. It won't even be cold at night, and it begins to slowly warm up. Monday, mostly sunny, the high 50 degrees at night, 35. Tuesday, Christmas Eve, mostly sunny skies, a high of 45, overnight low 32. And Wednesday, Christmas and Merry Christmas to all, and to all a sunny day. Well, partly sunny, the high will be 43, the overnight low 34 degrees. And the weather this morning is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And the top of the hour this morning has been supported by a number of folks. Plug in virtual reality, aging issues management, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, and of course Dominic Cigars at 8 o'clock this morning. They will bring you this week's football picks. That is Jake's picks of the week, and Jake will, of course, he will compete with, well, randomness. We have a bizarre wheel, which we will bring out, and it will contest against the knowledgeable Jake, and we'll see how he does. We'll also be meeting this morning with Steve Callis, who will stop by ESPN and other outlets, including the Westchester County Post. He's the sports editor there. So we'll have some fun with that this morning. And that is supported by Dominic's Fine Cigars. Fine Cigars. I shouldn't rush. Licensed retail with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road. I want to look at some of the regional stories. One of the ones that stuck out, this still breaks everyone's heart, and this is more than a week after the fatal stabbing of Barnard College freshman Tessa Majors in Morningside Park. The NYPD held a press conference that provided virtually no new suspects, and as two of the teen suspects continue to walk free. And again, we don't know what we don't know, but nonetheless, on the day since three teens allegedly killed Majors on December 11 in a robbery gone sideways, one suspect, 13-year-old Zaire Davis, has been charged with felony murder after purportedly admitting to a role in the robbery, but denying stabbing Majors. But another suspect, 14, was cut loose shortly after his arrest for lack of evidence beyond Davis's word. The alleged stabber, also 14, has yet to speak with investigators at all, pardon me once again, with multiple NYPD insiders saying that he bolted out of a car and away from his mom on Monday night while en route to meet with police. In a reiteration of facts that were already known and widely reported, and this we got from the New York Post, thank you, Post, that were already known and widely reported. Harrison on Thursday contradicted that account. He's a police rep saying he did not jump out of the cab while attempting to turn himself in. We shall see. We keep tabs on how New York State and particularly New York City runs their education departments, schools, etc. And we do so because we're concerned, the lack of oversight in Albany, number one. Number two, the pervasiveness of what at least this reporter believes is wrongheadedness in the New York City school system, and it being and the attempts to infiltrate or spread that virus here in New Rochelle and other locales that have good school districts. And this is another one, And a damning new report on city yeshivas found that just 2 of 28 provided adequate secular education to their students. At one of the Jewish religious schools, Department of Education investigators found no instruction at all in basic math, English, history, and science. And one of these schools stated that they did not offer any courses in secular studies. The school stated that it uses Jewish studies text in all aspects of the curriculum, and that within Jewish studies, English language arts, mathematics, social studies, civic science, hygiene, blah, 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 blah. DOE, Department of Education, found varying levels of compliance, with some offering a range in secular subjects. Now, here's the deal. Politics is why that happens, and we all know that. We've been through it before. And because politics matters and people vote, including Orthodox Jewish folks, they look the other way. Now, some commentary. I went to Catholic everything, grammar school, high school, great Catholic high school. Bishop Ford is no more. They had to sell the building because of the sex scandal, sadly. They needed the money. And then college, St. John's University, although after I got into corporate America, they sent me to Columbia for some stuff. And then I went to the new school to get ready to do this for a living. But basically, I loved my Catholic education. But I loved it because while there was religious instruction and there was religious influence, it was the core that mattered and the way it was presented. And so I have no problem with religious schools, and I'd be the last person to say don't have them. Because freedom of religion is important. In fact, I do think that they should get tax breaks for the stuff that is core, because the government owes us that much. However, you've got to do the core. If you don't do the core and your children can't come out with the education that the state requires, you should not get one thin dime. Not a bus to take your kids to school, nothing, zero. It really is a simple issue, but not when you get into politics, unfortunately, in this great country of ours. Another story, it's local, really. It's local, it's regional, and it's national. More than 267 million. That's a lot of folks, and probably some of you listening, wherever you are, including this reporter, are affected. Who knows? More than 267 million names, phone numbers, and user IDs of Facebook users were discovered on the dark web. The headline, Facebook hacked again. For the past 2 years, the massive trove of sensitive information was exposed to anyone who wanted to see it. Facebook, and it's tough for them. I don't ride them too hard over their unwillingness to ban bots and things like that and Russian hacking and all that, because it's hard. How many people would you need for the billions of messages that go on that website? But the things that you can fix like that, having a good firewall or whatever you call it, let the geeks tell you, they ought to get that done. The same way, and Jack Breslin's great contribution to this program as a teacher of journalism and mass comm is this, that more is always better, even if you don't like it. If you don't like MSNBC, you don't like Fox News, you don't like this outlet or that outlet, well, more is always better anyway in the marketplace of ideas. So we'll give you a little slack on that, Facebook, but not for getting hacked the way you do. 6:33 as we take a look now at the national news. And this this is refreshing. You notice we're going to just talk about the Trump thing briefly and the impeachment briefly as we get closer to Christmas. But if it's top news, we'll cover it right now. Things are at a bit of a standstill with Pelosi not going with, not yet presenting, using that leverage, not yet presenting the articles to the Senate and the Senate pushing back. So let them have their squabble. But we actually have, right here, look at this, a bipartisan success. And this is something that the president wanted to do, and it's a trade victory for the president. Write that down. Tell the kids. This out of Washington in the Associated Press this morning. One day after its historic impeachment votes, the Democratic-led House gave President Donald Trump an overwhelming bipartisan victory Thursday on a renegotiated trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. Now, when he did away with NAFTA, a lot of people were upset, including this reporter, but he did do what he said he would do and put a trade deal together that he believes, and many in both houses believe is better than NAFTA. Whatever the case may be, we'll let economists argue that. But this is a bipartisan success for the president, even after the impeachment. By a 385-41 vote, the House approved a bill that puts in place terms of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. The legislation passed after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her colleagues won key concessions from an administration anxious to pass the trade deal. And that's Washington's got to get back to this. Compromise. Get stuff done. For those of you who like Trump, see he got something done. For those of you who don't like Trump, see he and the Congress got something done. We can do this. We have to get back to this. The deal is projected to have only a modest impact on the economy, but it gives lawmakers from both parties the chance to support an agreement sought by farmers, ranchers, and business owners anxious to move past months of trade tensions that have complicated spending and hiring decisions. Meanwhile, the GOP-controlled Senate will probably take up the legislation when they return to Washington after the holidays and after dealing with the impeachment. Now, I mentioned it only because the field is narrowing. As you know, I don't have a great interest yet in the debates, that despite what we do for a living here, because I want the field to narrow, and this has been a very unimpressive group of Democrats, at least in my view. But nonetheless, we'll go to someone or an outlet that tends to care about how the Democrats do, and that is CNN. They said the winners last night were Amy Klobuchar, the Minnesota senator, benefited the most from the smaller number of candidates. She got to talk a lot more than in past debates. Joe Biden, they said, was one of the winners. The editor here says he wasn't sure whether it was the smaller number of candidates on stage or renewed confidence in his status as a frontrunner, but what he was sure of is that from beginning to end, this was his best debate. Andrew Yang. There were 6 politicians on stage in Los Angeles, and Andrew Yang's answers on any given question were miles away from how his rivals answered them. Hell, he talked about different things. His answer on being the lone non-white candidate, he called it an honor and a disappointment. Losers, and we won't get into details with the losers. Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, who everyone went after and they went after him because he did well. That's the penalty in these debates. He did well in previous debates. Winner and a loser, mostly because they said they were divided about his performance. In the end, the good outweighed the bad, but not by much. So, and the other loser, they said, was the first hour of the debate. It means that the goal is to examine where the candidates differ and why. The first 60 minutes featured not a single actual elucidation of where the candidates had real policy differences. Well, you know how I feel about that anyway, or how we do here on Radio Westchester. The debates, just, a little boring. Not that boring isn't important. If they were getting into policy in any great deal, it would be a great deal. It would be boring. It would not be. It might be boring. Excuse me. It might be boring, but it might be meaningful. There's two types of boring. There's boring because, oh my God, look at all these facts, and they're presented in a dull way, like what I do. But then it's boring because, wow, they're not saying anything because they don't want to take a position. They want to be for and against everything. And it's useless information. What a way to spend an evening. It is 6:38. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone here on Radio Westchester on its Friday, December 20th. A lot of interesting things going on, or went on this date throughout history. I'm going to share a few with you. Let's say adding some stuff to the program. And this is 1790, and no, for those of you who like to bust my chops, particularly Mitchell, no, I was not alive then. The first successful cotton mill in the United States began operating in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. In 1803, Thomas Jefferson was involved in this. The Louisiana Purchase was completed as ownership of the territory was formally transferred from France to the United States during ceremonies in New Orleans. South Carolina in 1860. I didn't know they rejoined us half the time. South Carolina became the first state to secede from the Union. And in 1864, this is 4 years later, obviously, as the war continued, Confederate forces evacuated Savannah, Georgia, as Union General William Tecumseh Sherman continued his march to the sea. And I didn't realize it was this early, but it was 1879 when Thomas Edison gave a private demonstration of the light bulb. Now, it took all these years, Mr. Edison. They finally have even this Klieg light that brights up my scary face, all this LED stuff and new light bulbs now. But still, the original, the long-lasting, well, now there are longer-lasting light bulbs. In 1956, now here's what bothers me about this. And you don't realize it when you're a kid, but in my lifetime, we still had segregation. In my lifetime, there weren't a lot of blacks in Major League Baseball, people of color, et cetera, et cetera. It bothers me that I've actually lived, even though I wasn't wholly conscious of it, and lived through the civil rights movement. But apropos of that, in 1956, the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott ended after a year following the Supreme Court's ruling to end racial segregation on buses. 1973, singer-actor Bobby Darin died of a heart attack at age 37. You don't see that much anymore. It still happens because of the new medications and blood pressure controls and such. But it still happens, as we lost Tony Soprano, if you will, James Gandolfini at only 51. But in his case, he was overweight and didn't take care of himself physically and had the classic body style for that. But still, I'm still shocked that happens. I'm still shocked that we don't have them. Once again, I'll ask Dr. Victor Sternberg about this today, that we don't have better ways in this day and age to screen for that kind of heart disease without entering your body with all kinds of mechanisms. And in 2011, a small plane headed from New Jersey to suburban Atlanta crashed onto a Jersey interstate, killing 2 men, 1 woman, 2 children, a woman and a dog. So today is Dot Your Eyes Day, Games Day, Go Caroling Day, International Human Solidarity Day, National Sangria Day, right? All these days, and Sakayawi Day, the honor of the 16-year-old daughter of Shoshone Indian chief who helped the Lewis and Clark expedition. Who knew? And that's what this day in history did. Now, it is 6:41. We'll share the weather with you again, but let's look at what's coming up at 7 o'clock. We have an early guest, and this is with Ron Herman King, CEO of Vanguard Communications. And you know what this is about? This is about doctors. The results of the study, including comparisons between online reviews of doctors versus restaurants and hotels. Do you know restaurants and hotels get better reviews than doctors? Yeah. And you join all these things, Yelp and everything else, to give reviews. And sometimes people get paid to give good reviews, so you don't know what you're looking at. And sometimes one bad review, I could have written one about Accessoride the other day that left a friend of mine who was a paraplegic stranded for 4 hours because of their incompetence. But then there are people who, even if you don't do something wrong, get paid to write bad reviews. But nonetheless, we'll ask this gentleman about that. But the most interesting thing that came out of the study is bad reviews for doctors. And it almost always has something to do with bedside manner or the failure to talk with them. So we will be talking with Mr. King at 7:20, Vince Russo at 7:35, the managing editor and publisher of the Westchester County, all these different newspapers. WestchesterCountyPost.com, Janelle Albritton. Then at 7:50, we'll be joined by Steve Callis. He's a sports guy with ESPN, a lot of local stations, and the sports editor for the WestchesterCountyPost.com. Jake's Picks at 8. Steve will be with us for that. And Jake, as you know, will make his football picks for the week. He's almost at 500. He was winning for a while, but now he's at 500. But what's interesting is some weeks he beats the wheel, and we just have a random wheel, and other weeks he does not. Will the wheel ever win? Will it ever really get out of Jake? We find that out at 8 o'clock. Then Dr. Victor Sternberg joins us from Politics and Your Health. And then at 8:50, we've been trying to get a hold of Al Tarantino. I think we'll get him on at 8:50, but that's still up in the air. We may just open it up to phone calls. Right now, we need to take another look at the weather because it's coming up on 6:45 here on Radio Westchester. The show, Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. We're here each and every morning from 6 to 10 o'clock, although we're changing our schedule very soon as the other programs get ready to join us. We will keep you informed about that as we head into the new year and add various segments and shows. Welcome to the program. If you're interested in, and I see we have a call there, and we'll get back to it, we will call you back right after this announcement. But the phones are open, 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. The weather is thus. It is still, it's now up to 24. We like that. Getting up to 33 today, sunny. The temperature averaging out, though, at 31, a little lower than the top of 33. Tonight, a few clouds. The temperature will be 17. The wind will be out of the northwest, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Saturday, a mixture of sun and clouds. The temperature 33. That's the average temperature. Sunny on Sunday. That rhymes. Well, there's a word for that. Alliteration, I think. The high will be 44. The overnight low will be 33 degrees. Monday, mostly sunny skies. The high 50 as it warms up. Christmas Eve, mostly sunny skies. The high 45. The overnight low 32. And on Christmas itself, partly sunny. The high will be 43. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. And the bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. And let's see who's been calling us this morning. We will put them on the air, and then we have much more to talk about. So we hear their little chime of their phone.
Hello.
Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester.
Good morning, Bob. It's Lorraine Carl. How are you?
Good morning, Lorraine. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy welcome to the program. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
I had to say hello to you. Anyway, what's on your mind this morning?
I attended the planning board meeting this week because and they're supposed to, we're supposed to have open communication about what's going on in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
But I stayed for two other presentations.
Mm-hmm.
One was the developer who will be building a housing parking lot and a new Boys and Girls Club in the Lincoln District.
Yeah. Are you there?
And yes, I'm there. I'm there.
Okay.
I don't know if it's your phone or mine.
I think it's yours this time. Go ahead.
Oh. But what is very disturbing is the fact that it's going to take 2 years to build the new Boys and Girls Club.
Why so long? These other buildings are going up like weeds, 60 stories, whatever.
I know. And there were people there from the neighborhood that said that they really...
She keeps going in and out. We're going to call you back. Hang up your wonderful phone. We are going to call you back because we have a good system now. This thing is working really well. So let's see what's going on. We're re-ringing the wonderful Lorraine call. Yeah, we're trying it again. Go ahead. You were saying about what the neighborhood...
The Boys and Girls Club.
Yes, continue.
And the citizens that attended from the area said that they did not have enough input with the developer and the Boys and Girls Club. So the Boys and Girls Club, the head of that particular division, got up and said that they're still in the process of finding out where it should be relocated temporarily. Now, it was also stated that, the children walk to it, walk home. It's easy access, especially if you live in the area and don't have a car. So, I think these children are very vulnerable, and that should be the first building to go up without destroying the older building. I mean, they certainly need a new building, but I think we really have to be very careful what's going on.
I'm glad you're bringing attention to this. It was apropos. I don't know if you heard the story this morning about the Masons, what their plans are for Residence Park. Do you know? Did you? I don't know if you were aware about. I guess it was about 7 years ago. I can't remember specifically now when a group with good intentions was trying to make it a historic district, and if you do that, other people, governments tell you what to do with your home. I was petrified at that meeting. Well, to the extent that any news person can. The people were nuts. They they have no idea if they make the people of Residence Park unhappy, what's going to befall them.
Yes. I mean, they should just ask the people that live in the back of the police station what they go through.
Oh, yeah.
And if they're renovating and whatever. Also, there was another presentation by the RXR about the building on Division and Church. Because they've bought extra property and they're going to be putting more parking. But they showed a rendering of the buildings that are going up. To me, personally, it is so overbuilt for that particular area, I cannot believe it. It just doesn't belong there, what they've designed.
Were you given a chance to ask about it, and did they respond?
I just asked about it because I wanted the site properly secured, because that area of town, as well as the West End, we have the biggest walking community to schools because the children are below the mile and a half. So I just wanted to make sure everything is secured, and children are guided where to walk at certain days. So that was what I said. But these developers have the lawyers that they know will get past planning board, zoning board. They're the regular lawyers that show up at every meeting. So I don't know if anything could be done with the design, but to me, it was totally overbuilt.
Okay. Anything else on your mind today?
No, that was it. That was it. No, only because yesterday Tom was talking about real estate.
Yes.
So I wanted to bring this in. So, the planning board has a lot of power.
I know.
And I don't know of anyone on that board that even lives around these areas that, know what's going on. I'm hoping they visit the sites before they listen to what the developers are saying, but I don't know.
Well, we're going to be as we get into the new year, we're going to be talking with Chuck Strom regularly as we get everything settled out for the new year. So you will be able to ask him directly.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So have a good weekend.
Lorraine, you too. And I want to talk to you before Christmas with you and your wonderful family. A Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, because I know you have both in your family as well.
Yes, we do. We celebrate everything.
I know. Don't forget to celebrate National Bob Day.
Okay,
Did you
when
hear
is
about?
that? Today?
Yeah. How's that?
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Lorraine
I'll
called,
have a
everybody.
drink on you. All
Okay,
right.
thank you
Bye.
so very much. It is National Bob Day. You know what I need to resurrect? I need to resurrect something I used to do years ago. I got in trouble about it because it was too personality oriented for one of the stations I worked at, which is, of course, their prerogative. But we used to have Bobaholics Anonymous, and people used to call up, and I'd say, "You a Bobaholic?" Or they call up and they'd say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm a Bobaholic," and they turn over their life instead of to the Almighty, to me. But it was silly. It was just one of those things. Hey, a couple of other things in the news today we can have some fun with, but the phones are open 914-222-3141, 222-3141. Now listen to this. A man in Iowa is trying to regain custody of a young coyote that he says has become his emotional support animal. A coyote, this thing's going to bite you. It's not going to support you. Anyway. Now, here's a new thing. Now, we knew this was coming. I should have saved this for Dr. Sternberg, although I have other stuff for him when he comes on in the 8 o'clock hour. Millions of Americans are driving under the influence of marijuana. This according to the CDC. Yep. The most recent national estimates who operate a car, it's in the millions. So you never know. The next time you're in a little accident, we need to come up with a test. And this is right and fair, folks. We needed to come up with a test that can be administered the same way a breathalyzer is. I have no problems with legalizing marijuana, by the way. And that we can always debate and talk about. And I've often had the mini debate with someone I admire greatly, Dr. Sternberg. But, you know, when they're ready to stop banning alcohol, I'll listen to banning this drug. Unless, of course, we find that it creates more problems. Now, one day, and it's not for today, I'll share with you my biggest concern about marijuana. And just in the generic sense, it has to do with people who have a predisposition to anxiety, depression, or schizophrenia. But that for another day. Now, these are always tough. And this flies in the face of something I often say here about when people abuse a wife or, for that matter, a child. A Crystal Kaiser, now 19, admitted to killing 34-year-old Randall Villard at his home last year after he allegedly raped her. This according to her attorneys. Now, it was afterwards is probably why, but life in prison seems like a hefty charge. Now, that's worthy of a conversation. You know, it's kind of like Lorena Bobbitt, what she did. And that was the first time, by the way, and this got me in a little trouble, but that's what we do here, that I realized, and it's because of men's behavior, by the way, so I'm not saying women should not have reacted. I did not understand the anger and the simmering anger that women in general had towards men, and let's say abusive men or sexually overbearing men, that women had until the Lorena Bobbitt incident, because their anger and their justification for maiming someone was palpable. And I felt really bad about that, because while I thought the guy maybe should have been beat up or whatever, or, you know, or divorced or even murdered, there was just something terribly angry and vindictive. Women were just so happy about maiming a human being and chopping off a part of their body, in that case, the penis. But we've learned a lot in the last 20, 25 years since that happened. And finally, with the Me Too movement, I'm understanding a lot better. I mean, I've always been a feminist in that regard, whether it's the church not letting women become priests or any of the scores of other things over the millennia that women have had to put up with. But I don't think I appreciated their inner simmering anger until that moment. But anyway, let's move on. Shipping companies are having trouble delivering holiday packages on time, and the on-time delivery rate for FedEx is only 68% during the holiday. Got a couple of other these nice little shorts. These are good. These are interesting. Flirting. Now, here's an interesting problem. In this day and age, you need to go to work in a hazmat suit. You can't talk to a worker of the opposite sex, and you dare not flirt with them, because if they break up or you break up, they're going to accuse you of God knows what, men and women. At least that's my sensibility. And this one day we'll do a whole show on this. But listen to this. They've done some studies, and workplace flirting that doesn't veer into sexual harassment territory is linked to positive stress relieving feelings. And new research shows this. It was in the Post. Of course it does. That we have evolved to the point where people don't flirt, where people don't have that casual kind of warmth. I mean, I worry about here is a radio performer, and parts of this are performing, obviously, to hold your attention. I know this is going to get me in trouble. If you're listening, love, please. But there's nothing better than when, and you see it on TV and you could feel the tension. It could be a woman's show and a good-looking Denzel Washington shows up, or Tom Cruise, and you could feel that tension. The woman realizes, the host, that she's in there with a handsome guy, and there's some, for lack of a better word, sexual attention. Same thing works in radio. A beautiful woman walks in here and she has my attention. And there's this healthy energy, so as long as you don't cross the line, that everyone loves and appreciates. It's what makes the world go round. Next time you get in your car and you drive down the thruway, you drive up on 287 or across 287 of the Hutch, every one of those cars is being driven by someone whose mother and father flirted. How much are we going to sterilize the world? How much do I have to worry about doing an entertaining show when a woman comes into here and without looking like a dirty old man, or without people feeling that it's over the top, because it's not real. With art, performance should be real. If a beautiful woman walked in here and I didn't have some little change of color in my face or some acknowledgement of that, even if it was slightly below the radar, it would be disingenuous of me, and the acting, or the fakery, would be that, as I often say, to protect myself, and ironically, oh, she's just another carbon-based life form. Anyway, get them off my chest, because what we've taken away, the little minor joys of life, we're just sucking out of it because of the environment we live in. Now, this isn't the first time I've read this story. A deputy has been accused of using obituaries to plan burglaries. That's right. A former Wisconsin sheriff deputy has been arrested after her own colleague became suspicious that she was involved in something not on the up and up. But once again, we go back to the movie. With very good point made in Home Alone. My favorite Christmas movie, by the way, is when the Joe Pesci character is finding out when people go on vacation. That's what people do. And they use obits as well. It's very, very common. Now, listen to this. Wow. An 11-year-old black girl was booted from a cheerleading team over her natural hair. Look at this. Now, I'm getting a call, there they are. I think that this should be our guest, and they called on the other line, so we're ready to do that. So let us segue to our guest. Before we do that, a reset. Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. It is 7 o'clock in the morning, and we go to our first guest, which I will set up. I mentioned it earlier this morning. But we are going to talk with Ron Harmon King. He's the CEO of Vanguard Communications, and he's going to give us the results of a study which analyzed 1.5 million digital reviews and found doctors, get this, I'm not surprised, by the way, but 194% more likely than restaurants to receive a 1-star review. And he says, and he'll also explain to us how a disappointing appetizer or a noisy corner room doesn't appear as upsetting, and hotel patrons as a physician's poor bedside manner. No surprise that, but let's get to the details. Please welcome Ron Harmon King. Good morning, Mr. King. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bob. How are you today?
Pretty good. You've heard me set this up. Now, when I got a chance to do this interview, I was not surprised, but the opportunity to validate what we all live with every day, doctors' bedside manners. Some are getting much better at it, but they're the outliers. Tell us about this study, please.
Well, we're a healthcare marketing and management consulting firm, and we pay a lot of attention to what patients say online about their healthcare experiences. And it's probably also no surprise to you that more than half of Americans now look at online reviews of doctors before they pick a new doctor, pretty much like they do anything they're buying, whether it's a washing machine or a new book or a new movie or a meal out or a hotel stay. So we looked at 1.5 million reviews on the website Yelp.com, and you're correct. People are more than double the odds of giving their doctors a 1-star review, but they're also, and compared to a hotel or a restaurant experience, they're also 64% more likely to give a 5-star review. So what the real finding here was that there's not much in the middle in terms of reviews of doctors. People either tend to give 1 or 2-star reviews or 4 or 5-star reviews. There are very few 3-star reviews, whereas you see a lot more of those in hospitality.
Do you think, Mr. King, that that's because when people are so shocked, like I have a guy here in New Rochelle, I'll even give his name, a Dr. Pisano, who actually spends time with me, answers my questions. This guy, almost everybody I know and work with in my business in this town, we go to him because he's that, but a lot of it is that he'll actually talk to you. He'll spend time. That's a big deal. But so you give, that's so rare that you'll give 5 stars to any doctor that does it. And the doctors that don't, you just wind up hating right away. At least that's my reaction. What say you?
Yes, we do judge our doctors more harshly than we judge our dinners or our hotel stays. And this survey certainly pointed that out.
Now, how is health?
But it's not just... Go ahead. No, go ahead, Bob.
No, how has healthcare changed because of it? I know I have one relative who has an internist that's so good, I want to marry the woman. It's just, this woman's terrific. Yeah.
One thing that's not changed is people want a personal relationship with their doctors. And despite the fact that healthcare is getting more corporatized and more practices are being bought up by large health systems and hospitals, people still want that one-on-one relationship with the doctors. Mm-hmm. And I will say this, people are not actually all that critical of physicians as much as they are the people around their physicians.
Oh, yes.
And what they express frustration over is the problems and the hurdles between them and their doctors, just getting to their doctors. They don't get phone calls returned. They have to wait too long to see a doctor in the waiting room. They have frustrations over billing questions. Those are the big drivers in healthcare experiences, less so actually than the actual doctor himself or herself.
Wow, this is great stuff. And we're seeing that, by the way, and I know your marketing focuses on this, but in every walk of life, particularly banks now. You can go into a bank. The local bank president could love you, adore you, but he or she is powerless to really make any decisions about you, whether it be a mortgage or anything else. They go back to this personless set of computers and people that have little niches. And I'm noticing that in medicine, too. You go into the doctor, and some 21-year-old kid that can't even pronounce the medicines that you take is asking you, like you'll come in with your arm hanging off, and they'll say, so how's your leg pain today? And they're off some chart. What are you finding about this, and are these results that you're gathering making any difference?
Well, we work inside those medical practices coast to coast, and one of the biggest mistakes, I think, in the healthcare profession is they often hire the lowest paid and the lowest trained people to be the frontline folks greeting patients and handling them administratively. That's a big mistake. When you go to a Ritz-Carlton or an Apple store or someplace else, you get superior service. It's because they've really carefully selected those people to interface with their customers. They're not designing the computers and building the computers or building the hotels or running them, but they're people who are often highly trained and educated to take care of the customer and customer service. And that's, I think, the number one thing in healthcare. In fact, our other research that we've done has really shown this.
Oh, absolutely. So where we go? Is it making a difference? The fact that you're doing this study, it really caught my attention. Obviously, where are you headed with all this, and how much are people buying this data? Are they using it? Are they improving at least medical customer service? Do you see that coming?
Yes, it's slow in coming. I have to say. I'm sad to say, healthcare, I think, is one of the last professions to acknowledge and realize and actualize that they're really in the service profession as much as they are in the science world. And just to cite one example of that, a few years ago, we did another study of social media and patients' reviews, and we looked at 35,000 reviews of not just individual doctors, but clinics and hospitals and everybody who calls himself a health provider. And what we found was that in 96% of the cases where somebody gave their experience a 1 or 2 star review, it was over customer service. Less than 4%, that's not even 1 in 20 people, were actually complaining about the quality of their care. They cared more about getting a return phone call, how long they had to wait for the doctor, all those things.
My guest is Ron Harmon King. He's the CEO of Vanguard Communications, and I could talk with you for an hour. Vanguard Communications and Healthcare Process Improvement is a Denver-based firm specializing in the integration of digital marketing and patient education and communications. I'll give you a case, and you can respond to us and tell us how this would help. I have a relative, don't want to name them, obviously, but came down with a very serious form of leukemia. Now, I'm not kidding. It took about 5 weeks before the family could get a straight answer about even prognosis. They could not get the doctor, no matter how many times they went back to the hospital and made a phone call. It was right out of Kafka. Why is this happening? Why is the doctor so distant from the patient?
Well, I think it's tradition, and it's the structure of the bureaucracy that's been in place for quite a few years. It is changing, and the internet especially is forcing that change. Now it's much more transparent. We can look at doctors the same way we look at anything we buy on the internet: meals, hotel stays, cars, tires for our cars, anything else. And the healthcare industry is responding to this, but they're slow in changing sometimes, like a lot of humans are.
So what else are you learning? What else do you want us to know?
Well, I would say by and large, be wary of online reviews, but they are an indicator often of what you can expect from any particular physician. A lot of people who write these reviews are chronically ill. They're not in a good mood. They're not always clear thinkers. But by and large, you can rely on the aggregate of a website that's got a lot of reviews of your doctor that you're considering going to.
Now, Mr. King, is it true that there are, and probably doctors too, but businesses out there that hire people to give them good reviews that aren't even real, or bad reviews to others that aren't real? How do we weed those out?
Well, we are seeing some of that. I have to say, in my own personal observations, it's getting rarer and rarer. And also, to their credit, websites like Yelp.com and others do have some filters to spot those things and keep them out, but they still get through from time to time. I think the real way to spot one of them is often there'll be a very short review and there's not a lot of details, and that's probably a troll or a robot doing that review. Because
it's one of the problems with social media. We have something here in Westchester, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I do it on a show called The Best of Westchester. And if you've got friends who could go online and click a like button, you can have I'm going to make something up now without getting too personal. You can have, we'll say, I don't know, an auto dealership, we'll make it up, and you sell one car every 6 months and it's got 2 wheels on it. But if you have the social media ability to put likes in, you will be the best car dealer in Westchester. So, right. So that's a whole nother thing. But wow, this is interesting stuff. I just applaud you for doing this and making it into a business. Now, how can we help you? You've come on and you've educated us, and it's good to know that if we give a review, it's going to matter. Who do you give this information to? How can we help you?
Well, I think the best thing all healthcare consumers can do is be honest and frank, but in a constructive way when they write their online reviews, and don't do it just in public. Try to get that information to the practice, the clinic, the hospital that you're going to see, because more and more voices are being heard by these groups, and especially some hospitals in the country and some forward-thinking doctors who are in private practice are doing a lot more to respond to those things. So just using the voice.
It's really interesting. Just another anecdote, if I may. I was helping a family member who wasn't good at communicating with doctors, and I was meeting with the doctor and the patient. And the doctor was talking about this surgery, post-surgery, saying, and all this bone growth, wow. And The patient almost fell off the chair. Oh my God, I've got growths in my back. So I saw the doctor later. I said, hey, doc, I talk to people for a living. I said, the average person didn't know the context that bone growth in this case was good. Because, geez, I didn't think of that. Yeah. I said, you got to think about that when you talk to these people. So it's very, very interesting. Because she would have given them a bad review, and it was actually, he was giving her good news.
Yes.
Isn't it interesting?
Let's try to be fair when we do these things.
Yeah, and that context matters. Hey, listen, I know I've kept you late, but what a great job. Where can people get more information about Vanguard Communications?
Well, they can get more information about our study at the website loveorhatedoctors.com. Loveorhatedoctors.com.
Ron Harmon King, CEO of Vanguard Communications. Great stuff. You are welcome here anytime. This is valuable information. Have a great day, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Marrone. A real pleasure talking to you.
Please, and it's Bob. Thank you so much. All righty, let's move ahead. We know Vince is coming up. I'm wondering if y'all have any stories like that. I'm just going to remind you of the headlines here today, the local headlines, and then we'll get on with more guests of the show. I like this song. Little transitional piece of music. All righty, it is 7:13. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. And by the way, all this sitting for 4 hours straight is killing my back. I've got to do something ergonomically here because it took me years to get my back. I may even stand up for parts of the show, but then we have to angle the camera blocking it, but we'll get to that. All righty, in Somers, a bus driver drove drunk with kids on board last week. He had a blood alcohol. He had a blood alcohol content of a 0.22. That's 3 times the legal limit. And there's a new toll proposition for the new Mario M. Cuomo Bridge. And if you have Easy Pass, it's not too bad. It's about $5. It's still a lot better than the George Washington. $15, give us all your money. Now, some speculate for years that the toll could reach $10 to $15, so at least it's not going that high. But they are proposing that it'll be $6.75. You may get a little discount if you live in Rockland or Westchester. That's not a done deal yet. But that's what the proposition is. Up in Ramapo, masked men ransacked a home there. There was nobody home. It looks like they were probably in Florida or something like that, or as in the Home Alone movie, on vacation. Something for you all to be aware of if you're going away. Don't tell a lot of people, particularly people you don't know very well. And the Westchester County legislator, Catherine Parker, is throwing her hat in the ring. 1 in 10. Nita Lowy retires, and the wolves and the vultures are circling the seat. Everybody wants to go to Congress. AOC proved that, well, even a bartender can be become a congressperson if you're in the right district. I mean, that's a little tongue-in-cheek, I know, but nonetheless. And prosecutors are saying the missing video of Jeffrey Epstein's suicide, the suicide attempt actually was found. And if you know the Tartaglione case, that guy accused of 4 murders, he wants it because he was a cellmate of Epstein at that time. And the city is bringing to account the authorities from the Masons who have bought the campus, the former College of New Rochelle. They want to know what they're doing with it. Now, it really does look like they want to turn it into a senior home and a senior campus and adult care facility, and that's a great thing. But I just thought that it was well worth it to mention again. If the folks from the Masons are listening, certainly the city knows of this, and if some of the people there at the city are new, I've covered 2 stories in my life that scared me, and I know it's worth discussing anytime you want to call about it. One was when New Rochelle built the most beautiful dog park I've ever seen, about 7, maybe 8, 10 years ago. I can't remember now how long ago it was. And the people who wanted the entire park, the park up at the north end of New Rochelle, they wanted the whole park for their dogs. Those people were crazy. And they absolutely frightened me. Their eyes were spinning in their heads. They were, our dogs deserve their own community. They need houses, welfare, and dog food stamps. And how dare you take the park away from them? Why should they have to be on leashes? They're free. It was nuts. Now, look, I understood their love of animals. I have that love of animals, but my priorities aren't mixed up. Anyway, crazy. Well, the other time I was frightened, and look, we've covered murders, fires, you name it, anyone who does this for a living. The other time I was petrified is when some group tried to push through a movement to have Residence Park become an historically designated area where the government, or at least the construct around it, the laws, the rules, the code, would have government tell them what to do. Oh, my goodness. It was a room over in Willow Towers. There weren't enough chairs, walking space, window sills, steps to handle the people that showed up, and they were not. So word to the wise, to my friends at the Masons, make sure you get input from that community. Make sure they're happy. Because if you don't, I'm going to refer you to the original Frankenstein movie when they were circling the windmill with torches. You do not want. And these are wonderful people. This is a wonderful area. I mean, it's really, Residence Park is probably maybe the most underrated area in the city. It's a wonderful place to live, except for parking. Let me just say that. And all those circles where when you park your car, you can't find it. Wonderful place to live. But don't mess with them, folks. Just don't do it. You do so at your own peril. At 7:18, we're going to talk with Vince Russo about some of these issues in a little bit. And after that, Janelle Albritton from the Westchester County Post.com. And this top of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. And I know I should be putting on my Christmas hat on, my lights or something like that. I will do that. I'm just having all kinds of fun. I just keep thinking about that meeting in Residence Park years ago. And I learned a lesson, too, at that time. And it wasn't so much because the people who wanted to make it an historic district were doing so for property values and to make sure that the housing stock and the code would preserve the history of the neighborhood. I mean, all kinds of history down in that area. It's an older area. You also had Lou Gehrig's houses there and things like that. But they didn't get the word out. They put stuff in mailboxes, and it was not an error. It was not done malevolently. It was just an oversight. But these people didn't want to hear bumpkin. I don't know that it's ever. This is God. Please do yourself a favor, Masons. Make sure you include the community. It's not going to be a good day for you if you do not. 7:19. And look, he called. How did I miss it? I'm looking at the darn phone. He's going to say, I tried to call. And then you didn't pick up, so now I got to call him. All right. But we have, see, there he is. It's ringing now, folks. It's ringing now. See if he picks up. Don't say a word because you're on the air. And if you say a bad thing, the devil will care. How do you like that? Good morning, Vince Russo. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. How you doing?
Pretty good. Did you hear that guy about doctors and stuff? That was great. No,
I only heard a very small portion of it.
Well, it won't surprise you. And we wanted to get your feedback. Of course, Vince Russo, general commentator, joins us each morning, warms me up, if you will. And the reason we took this interview and we took it early was how fascinating it was that doctors get worse ratings, like on online Yelp and things like that. They get worse ratings than restaurants, customer service, banks, if they're not nice to patients. Isn't that a well-deserved elbow in the nose?
Well, there was an interesting study done a number of years ago that showed that people felt that doctors, if they made a mistake, even a fatal mistake, could be forgiven if they treated the people nicely. People feel that doctors treat them kind of as cattle. You come in, you go through the little corral, they come in, all right, how you doing, blah, 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 and then out you go. And people felt that if the doctor would treat them a little more personally, it would go a long way.
Well, or what they do now when you go in, the plethora of physician's assistants and kids, that just got out of high school, and they ask you boilerplate questions despite what's in front of them. You know, like someone could come in with an artery opened up, bleeding on the floor, but they have, if they look at the chart, they had been there for, let's say, a collarbone issue. You could be bleeding on the floor, and the idiot kid will say, so the cause your pain in the collarbone, and I want to reach for his collarbone and break it.
Well, yeah, and I know my doctor, you know, every time I go, he says, I have to ask you, you know, are you feeling depressed? Are you suicidal? Are you blah, blah, blah? And I say, no, doc, only when I go to my council meetings do I feel that way. You know?
No, but at least he talks to you, doesn't he, or she?
Well, he does talk. He does talk to you, but, you know, it's fortunately, I'm healthy and my interaction with the doctors are minimal.
You say minimal. You are, yes. Go ahead.
But, you know, it's tough. You know, my brother lives in California, and he has Kaiser Permanente, which actually is a very good health plan.
Sounds like a South American dictator. What is it? Kaiser Permanente? The Kaiser himself.
And they have a fairly strict time limit on how long they can see the patients. Mm-hmm. It's like 20 minutes. And when it approaches that 20-minute mark, they're pretty much, you know, have you ever called up a company and they say, you know, their customer service, and you say, well, I have such and such a problem. They say, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they go, is there anything else we can help you with, Mr. Marrone?
See, you're being too kind. Allow me. Bring. Hello, American Distress. How are you today? You know, I'm from Sri Lanka, and I'm not going to be able to do anything for you other than what's on this script. Well, as you know, my head got stuck under a tractor trailer yesterday, and I need to speak to somebody about stuffing the brains back in, and my mother was killed in the accident. Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you for calling American Distress. I want to go reach in, and if there was an ability to electrocute. Now, look, they need the job, whatever it is. They need the 8 cents an hour, whatever the hell they're paid, and wherever they are, good. I don't care about outsourcing stuff, but they ought to be able to do the job.
Well,
thank you for calling American Distress. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Usually they don't speak English either, but...
Well, that's what I was trying to see. See, but if I do any accents, they'll call in, he's a racist, because no. If you do the accent, I'm only mimicking what you did, okay? Or they talk at a pace you can't hear. Well, excuse me? Account number. Oh, okay. Or you give or you spell your name. Marrone. Marrm. Can I have the next one, please?
Who?
Freaking break.
I was just reading an article that on the federal level they now have raised the age where you can buy tobacco products to 21, and I was surprised. It's not that way across most of the states. Mm-hmm. Here in New Jersey, it's 21, but in many places, it's as low as 15. And, you know, tobacco and...
Down in Gooberland? Where's it as low as...
I don't know. It's probably, you know, somewhere in the South.
Well, you know, I'm married to my wife is also my cousin, and we've been smoking since we was 14.
Well, you know, in our... municipality, you know, I'm the coordinator of our local alliance, which is part of the Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse. And this business with vaping has become an enormous problem. Mm-hmm. You know, we're seeing it here in our middle school. You know, in the high school, you figure, well, you know, kids are going to be trying cigarettes and now this vaping stuff. But we're seeing it on a very, very large scale in the middle schools. You know, where these kids are smoking this stuff. And, you know, in many cases, it's way more than just smoking cigarettes, you know, because a cigarette has a clearly defined amount of nicotine in it. It's one cigarette, and it's one cigarette's worth.
It's a deliberate intent to addict you as well. It's great stuff.
Yeah, and with this vaping stuff, you know, the concentration, you can buy this nicotine concentrate that's like just almost pure nicotine and smoke it. And also there's all these other kind of chemical things that anyone has no idea what these things are. And what's happening as well is the interaction among them. Kids will say, "Oh, I got this, lemon flavored one. We'll try this," and they'll, give it to another kid, and then someone else will have peach flavored, and they have no idea what's in these substances. And kids are smoking this stuff like crazy now, and becoming addicted to it. It's a huge problem. It's the next big thing, because it's been marketed twofold. One, it's been marketed as an alternative to cigarettes. It used to be, smoke these things and you can wean yourself off cigarettes. And the second thing is, with all of these flavors and fancy packaging and all this other kind of stuff, kids now more and more are being attracted to this stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what I can't figure out, and that's because I'm essentially stupid. But how is it that these things weren't tested before they went on the market? How did they skirt all around all of the conventional tests? And I don't get it.
Well, because the government is always slow to react to new things. They ban tobacco for people under certain ages, and when this vaping business started, nobody reacted to it.
Well, it was supposed to be the healthy alternative, Vince, if you recall.
It was supposed to be that, yeah, and it was supposed to be a therapy to take people, wean them off cigarettes, because they would get less and less dosages of nicotine until finally they were not addicted to it anymore. But no one ever thought of the reverse, where they said, hey, maybe people are going to use this stuff the way they use tobacco products. And so they're very slow. The FDA has no idea and doesn't regulate what's in this stuff.
Yeah, it's I don't know what they're going to do. We had a case here in Yonkers where a store, because the governor did act pretty quickly here, but still it hasn't been put into law yet because it's been court challenged. And one vaping shop was told to close because, hey, you got to stop poisoning people. But then they got a reprieve because we're losing money. It's just like you have in your state. I can't believe that New Jersey, that your Senate lost their testicular muscle and their courage and their testosterone when they refused to vote on the law by these people that want exemptions for religious reasons for vaccinations. What the hell is wrong with your state?
Yeah, it's crazy, and that seems to be the growing trend, is all these people who are against vaccinations. But it's really weird. I mean, it's the same people who are saying, oh, the high-tension wires are, causing autism, and, the phase of the moon affects you in certain ways. It's really this crazy stuff, and the greater good should...
it must always prevail. It is, and again, I hate when they mention God, because I don't like to give religion a bad name. I mean, look at you. You found God. You're on your way to heaven. You're on the express bus to heaven. And they bring out some book that was written 2,000 years ago when they didn't even know what an atom was, and they thought the world was flat. They don't say anything about that. It says here in the Bible. I don't have... No, but please stop. Please, God doesn't want us to No, he wants you to die. God will take care of us. I know he will.
Yeah, it's crazy how people are willing to put, their own kids at risk and also other people's kids. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know, and but anyway, it just bothers me, because with all due respect, you can't endanger the lives of other people. You want to leave America, that's fine. Take the express bus out of town, but we've got to care for the greater good. Did you watch any? I did not. I just look at the accounts because they're so boring. And did you watch any of the debates last night? And in your view, who did well?
No, I didn't watch any. We had a council meeting last night, so I was. At that, so I couldn't watch. I really didn't read any of the accounts either. The one thing I did notice, someone said that Biden really was kind of marginalized. I don't know.
No, actually, the accounts I got was that he was pretty good.
Was he? Yeah.
Buttigieg, they said, got his butt kicked for the first time because he was doing so well in recent debates. Everybody came out with their guns aimed at poor Buttigieg. But they don't say anything
Well,
meaningful. I don't even know what it means to win a debate anymore. Who lies better?
Well, the one thing that I did see was people felt that the debate was at least a little more interesting and active because there was less people.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little more manageable than they were in the past when there was like 14 people on the stage, and each person got very, very little time to to talk. But all of these debates, Bob, they just bother me because all they do is get up there and they spout their talking points, no matter what the question is. They say, well, what would you do to increase jobs? I'm glad you asked that. So I think that it's impossible for us to do anything unless we have border security. And they never answer the questions. And, when they ask questions like that and the answer is, well, we've got to increase jobs, why doesn't the moderator say, well, how specifically are you going to do that? We all know you got to increase jobs.
Oh, yeah. I call it the more better syndrome. Get a more better job, a chicken in every pot, Kate Upton in every bedroom. Please, give me a break. So I, as much as I'm supposed to do that for a living, and I do, I wait until the next morning. I read all the newspapers, and I look at the headlines and the cuts and try and figure it out. I don't want to give up another night of my life watching something that won't amount to anything until we get closer to the election, if you follow me. Hey, did you see, and this really bothered me because personally I like the guy, and he's a great broadcaster, Mark Simone, who, like a lot of people in the industry, I guess the feeling is if you don't turn hard right, you're going to lose your audience. So Mark, who just does some great radio, but he should be doing music. He shouldn't be doing talk, but still, great broadcaster, great voice, all that. He goes on Lou Dobbs and compares, and I hope you're sitting down, compares the president's rambling 6-page letter to Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. He compares it to the Gettysburg Address. Well, it's been coming. I go back and forth with another radio colleague that, Mark's gone round the bend. But again, everybody in radio does it, because AM radio has become the home of the right. And so there are a few shows like my own that go to the left or the right, depending on the issue. And because, you just don't get the ratings. So poor Marr, who's a great broadcaster, I just wish he had that show Saturdays on ABC, for example. He did the old-fashioned music. He's a great broadcaster, just is. But to waste talent on and then throw it, I mean, Lionel did it. Lionel was on my own show, and I'm outing Lionel only because he is one of my absolute heroes. And when I had him on my show, he was a conspiracy theorist. Mm-hmm. So, the deep state and all that, but still talented. Love the guy, but in order to make a living in this business and pay the rent, you have to wear a tinfoil hat. It's very
after our council meeting last night, a few of the council members and the mayor went to a local restaurant, and we sat down. We had a pizza and a couple of drinks, for the holidays, and just chit-chatted. And I got to tell you, everybody we talked to thought that Trump is being railroaded. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I love he's honest with us. He's straightforward. He tells us as it is.
I'm going to make a comparison, and it sticks. Do you remember the people when John Gotti finally got committed, turning over police cars? You don't know. He's the man. Yeah. He's good to us. He's great. How could you do this to him? You're persecuting him. Well, yeah. You keep breaking the law. We keep chasing you. That's how it works. Willie Sutton was upset. They kept arresting him.
As I said the other day, people who support Trump are going to support him no matter what.
Yes.
And it doesn't.
And then you have the Trump haters that won't give him they just approved a bill. The Senate and the Congress just passed a bill bilaterally for a new NAFTA, if you will, a new trade agreement that the president's been pushing since he got elected. So, but people who hate him won't care, and that's just the way it is. Listen, we got to go. We'll talk to you again soon, Norton. Thank you very much for your time. That's Vince Russo, everybody. It is 7:36. Thank you so much. And I know that's Janelle Albritton's number. We're going to get her on, and we're going to talk with Janelle. But first, we're going to take another look at the weather. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. And the weather is basically this. It's going to be sunny all day. It's 20 degrees right now. Actually, it's 24, correction. It will go up to about 31 or 32 today. Tonight, getting down to 19. Tomorrow, still more sunshine. The things will begin to warm up just a bit to the mid till high 30s, a little colder at night. And then as we get into Sunday, things will begin to warm up gradually. Still a lot of sunshine right through Christmas, more or less, with the temperature gradually getting up. And Christmas will be in the mid-40s. The bottom of the hour as we enter now is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena & Con, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars, who will soon bring you Jake's football picks of the week as he competes with the wheel and competes with you, the random wheel. If the random wheel beats you by the time we're done, Jake, it's going to be a sad day for you. Steve Callis will be joining us as we do that right after Janelle Albritton, who's on hold as we speak. And that segment will be brought to us by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente Padrons and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, open 7 days. And with that, we go to such a busy woman. She's in the healthcare business. She is a jazz singer, a videographer. She does stuff up at our prisons to help inmates. And she is the managing editor and publisher of the Westchester County Post.com. Please welcome Janelle Albritton. Good morning, Janelle.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, busy, having fun. There's sunshine out. I'm cold. I actually have a blanket on my legs. It's cold in here this morning. I got to fix the heater. But other than that, I'm good.
Yeah.
What's going on with you? What's the latest in your newspaper?
Oh, well, let's see. I covered the 2 nights of fundraising for Pepe Cardona. That was a beautiful night at the
I saw that, yes.
The Napoli Stone Mill. And for folks who want to still contribute, there's a GoFundMe page open for him. That
explain why explain why Pepe needs help.
Pepe needs help because he is going through chemo for pancreatic cancer, and he's going to go just take some time off and fight this thing. And being, a professional musician for the last 50 or so years, he doesn't exactly have the best retirement plan going. And so people gathered together, and it's been really beautiful. The first night sold out right away, and so they added a second night. And it was a showcase of musicians just performing and people donating money for him, and it's a beautiful thing. So there's a link on the Facebook page for Napoli Stone Mill, or I've been trying to get the exact link, but it's a GoFundMe page for Pepe Cardona. You can go onto GoFundMe, or you can go onto WestchesterCountyPost.com, and probably by tomorrow I should have all of that information up.
That's terrific.
If they want to support him.
Now, how old is the gentleman, and how long has he been sick? And once again, before you leave, before we switch off to Mr. Callis in about 10 minutes' time, how long has he been ill, and how can we help and give that information again? How long has he been ill?
That I'm not sure. As far as I understand, the diagnosis is fairly recent, and it's his first diagnosis. It's not like a recurring thing.
Well, that's good.
And he's in good spirits. So
the nature of that disease is, unless they catch it early, it usually by the time it presents symptoms, you've had it for a while. So we wish him the best. What else is going on? What else are you writing about? What kinds of juices are you drinking? Like walnut juice or something? What's up with that?
Oh, wow. Walnut, that would probably be walnut butter, but that's a good idea. I'm happy to say my brand new juicer arrived yesterday. And I was just on my way out to the gig because I had a jazz gig with John Smith last night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and we had a great time last night. But so I haven't had time to open up my juicer yet, but I'm very excited. I'm on the celery juice regimen, and I was not feeling well since Thanksgiving, but I'm finally feeling better.
What do you mean you weren't feeling well? You're Janelle Albritton. You are a special health person. You sound good. You can sing. How were you not well? What was wrong with you?
It's almost it's almost embarrassing to say that even a health educator sometimes doesn't feel 100%, but there's something going around, and I didn't I wasn't as sick as I've been before, but I was not feeling well for the last few weeks, but it feels good to be feeling good again, and
I'm glad.
Getting back on my regular routine of juicing, and I'm just really happy to
Janelle, I always
have my new machine.
I'd love to ask this of people because, actually, I watch what I eat. A lot of my stuff is tongue-in-cheek about this. But now someone people who haven't seen you should go watch you sing one of these nights. She is, and I say this in no way misogynistic, but she's a very attractive woman who's in great shape and can sing. Now, having said that, and all your health, do you ever just sit down and eat a giant steak with enough onions that you need a shovel and a big giant baked potato with steak sauce in it and sour cream and then push bread inside your left ear? Do you ever do that?
Well, the left ear part I have never thought of, but that sounds...
Do you ever do that?
I have not. It's been a while, I have to admit. It's been a while since I've done that. And, I don't look down or judge other people who do, but for me, I just feel better when I eat a certain way.
Well, of course. Yeah. Now, okay, let me ask the next question. So, the man of your dreams, okay, decides he's going to take...
It's you, Bob.
Well, of course, we knew that, but we don't reveal it here on the air. But the man of your dreams finally gets up his courage, and he says, Janelle Albritton, I want to take you to a dinner. I'm taking you out to dinner. What's your favorite restaurant? What are you likely to tell him, and what are you likely to order?
Well, let's see. One of my very favorite restaurants is actually on Greenwich Avenue in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's called Back 40 Kitchen. And it's the owner of the restaurant also owns an 80-acre organic farm, and they buy many of their ingredients from about 15 different farms.
No, I get it. The organic food. Have you ever been to Portland, Oregon? With people there, you sit down. I was out there, and someone ordered a burger. He came this close to asking the waiter where the cow went to school and if it brought up its children correctly. But that's said. All right. So it's organic.
That's important.
It's all important. What are you going to get to eat? People are now leaning into their radios and their computers. What is the health freak in great shape, sings like a songbird, publisher, health professional? What does Janelle Albritton order?
Let's see. One of the last times I was there, I had, for the appetizer, I had a butternut squash that was garnished with craisins and...
Okay, sounds good. I have the rope around my neck now. I want to know the main course. What did you get? What did you order? Sauteed celery?
My companion and I, we shared, I believe it was a lobster ravioli.
Now we're talking.
It was some kind of pasta dish with lobster, and it was delicious.
And now we're talking. Okay. So you're able to have seafood. Now, what's your favorite dish in the whole world? Forget whether or not it is healthy. What's your favorite dish in the whole world? What if it's your last day on earth, but you're going to go to heaven, so you still have an appetite if there is such a place, but you get to eat one last human meal. What are you going to get? Roast beef, lobster, celery juice.
Yeah, I'm not going to say celery juice for this question.
That's right.
I'll probably go with a beautiful scallops.
Okay. Oh, I love. You know, I'm glad you said that. Did you ever gone to a cocktail party or an event and they have the scallop with a little piece of bacon wrapped around it?
Yes.
If I could only eat a 1 ounce meal, I'd have 2 of those before God takes me to what I know is my wonderful reward. My guest is Janelle Albritton, and again, it's so hard to define her because she does so many different things. Of course, she's one of our newspaper people. She's the managing editor and publisher of the Westchester County Post, or WestchesterCountyPost.com. She's a healthcare professional. She is a health professional, does stuff there. She does stuff up at our prisons to help people who are incarcerated, or for that matter, moving from incarceration. So many, a videographer, which is how we met. So what's your next paper coming out, or what are the updates to your website before we move on to your sports geek?
Well, it's very exciting stuff right now. I'm looking to go to print soon. I don't have a date. I don't want to say a date, but things are moving.
If you had a date, you'd
that.
be eating that lobster meal. Go ahead. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Okay.
That's yuck, yuck, yuck.
Go ahead.
And let's see. It's just right now we're just looking at sports. And right now my special area of focus in terms of wellness is diabetes. So I'm looking to do some workshops to help people prevent and reverse their diabetes.
Do you know what's interesting? You know, for all my kidding, that is a field of study. We had on a couple of diabetes centers a couple of years ago. It is much more about lifestyle and diet than it is about medication. It's incredible.
Yes, it is.
Incredible.
It is. And it's not about genetics. It's more about behavior and choices. And people just really don't know. And diabetes it's an epidemic, and it's trending. It's going from 1 out of 200 people, and it's projected to be, 1 out of, I think right now I don't know what the number is now, but it's projected to be something like 1 in 6 people in the next 20 years.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, people like you are probably going to have a lot more who are in the public health field and talk about diet and lifestyle are going to have a lot more to do with the reversal of that illness than probably any other group. Janelle, thank you very much. We're going to send you on your way, and then we're going to bring on one of your employees, one of our favorite guests, Steve Callis. He is the editor, the sports editor for the WestchesterCountyPost.com. Thank you very much, Janelle. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, we'll talk to you before the holiday, and let me see where I was. I know Callis has been trying to get in. We know this situation, so we're going to call him right now. This is Radio Westchester. We already have our man in the dock. He is Jake Schaefer. Good morning, Steve Callis. How are you?
All good. Great to be with you and Jake, as always.
Well, we have Jake here. Well,
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays as well. Now, we're going to have you, if you want to have some fun, stay with us right through 8, because Jake, we have Jake's picks, and then Jake, believe it or not, and I'm going to put the Wonder Wheel up in a minute, we actually have Jake make picks, Stephen.
Okay.
We have him make picks versus a random, like a bizarre wheel.
Steve, you have to help me with the.
Go ahead.
You gotta help me with the Cowboys-Eagles game. I have no idea.
Okay, but we're not going to go there yet, and I want to remind people, Steve Callis is the sports editor and writer for the WestchesterCountyPost.com. You know him for his years on radio and writing columns. He's been on ESPN. He does a very well-known podcast. He is a pro's pro. Now, I cut a couple of things out for you just before we get into the more obvious stuff. You and I talked about this last week, and with Jake, too. Did you see the piece in the New York Post about the evolution of the new coach, Mike Miller, and how he earned his stripes of the New York Knicks?
Oh, I did not. I'll have to go look that up online afterwards. I actually get the daily news at my house, so that's what I get now, although they've been, fired a lot of their sports writers. But yeah, no, I'd like to know. He's an interesting guy, and the Knicks finally won a few games.
Yes, they did. But he's an interesting guy because he played Division I, but he also, I'm standing up because this chair is killing my back. He played Division I, okay? but he also coached at every division of basketball. He coached in the G League for the Spurs. He is so well respected that Jeff Van Gundy, but this is like a down in the minors, a guy who's respected for what he does. He's so well respected that he recruited him when he was putting the USA team together.
Wow.
But the problem is here in New York that they like big names. But this guy may actually be the real deal. He's a great teacher. I told you, I saw him with the Westchester Knicks when I was doing pregame shows for them. And even in the regular shoot-around, he was working with players constantly. So anyway, I wanted to ask you about that. Another thing I wanted to ask you about was Didi Gregorius. Been tuning into some shows. Are the Yankees going to miss him or not?
Absolutely, they're going to miss him because you're not sure. Can Torres play short? Yes, he has the talent. Yes, he has the ability. He was so comfortable at second base last year and had an incredible year again. I think they're going to miss him a lot. Didi lost a lot of money because, he got hurt. He had that Tommy John surgery. Think if he had been a free agent after the year before rather than this year where he missed a lot of time early, struggled when he came back, never quite hit it like Didi. The 2 or 3 years before that, he was incredible. So I think he lost a lot of money. He took a one-year deal. I think he thinks he can reestablish himself, which I agree with. Obviously, he's going down to Philly, so he'll be there with, his buddy Joe Girardi. I think the Yankees are going to miss him because, yes, they look like they have an embarrassment of riches in the infield, but that somehow doesn't always shake out the way it's supposed to. So I think they missed him, and I guess they couldn't sign him or didn't want to sign him, or they gave Garrett Cole, as we talked about the other day, so much money. There's not a lot of money left. 1 year, $14 million for Didi Gregorius, if you wiped out last year, is incredibly cheap. It might be a DJ LeMahieu kind of thing, where he wins the batting title. He has next year he's bad in Colorado. He shows up at Yankee Stadium, and he's the greatest signing in the last 20 years for the Yankees for $12 million a year.
Yeah, go figure that. Now, something I just got a note, but I'm going to have him ask you himself because this came out of his brain. You do remember when Carmelo Anthony, and you may want to, when he paid $3,000 for his jersey. What do you think Cole's his number rather? What do you think Cole is going to play to get? Now, who's got the jersey, Jake? Who's wearing it now?
Voigt. I think Luke Voigt.
Luke Voigt,
45.
Little chubby Luke Voigt. Yeah. What do you think? How much do you think he'd pay for it?
Well, there have been some deals. If I'm Luke Voigt and I've only been in the league for a few years, I'm getting as much as I can get because Gary Cole could just,
I said a sports car.
I say 20,000 is pocket money for Gary Cole now.
Yeah, I said
you might walk out of your house with 50 or 100 cash. He could probably walk out if he felt like it with thousands and thousands of dollars.
Just for a number.
I think there'll be something, but some guys are gracious and just give them the number. But lately, in the last, I'll say 10 years, it's kind of like you need to give me X, or maybe Luke Voigt will say give something to my favorite charity. That would be pretty cool, and he'd get some good press out of that.
Yeah, but Luke Voigt's not making a lot of money yet. He's probably making the minimum, and he seems like the kind of player who's not going to be around for a very long time. I mean, he looks like a throw pillow with eyes. I mean, I can't see a guy with that kind of body type staying in the league very long.
Well, he's got that bulky build, you're right, but he's a heck of a player, I think, and a very good hitter.
Well, I like him.
If you can hit, Bob, they find a place for you. You know how that works, especially in the American League.
Well, and then what about the other guy with an eating disorder, Dominic Smith? Did I read that the Mets let him go? Did they finally let him go to somebody else? Did they trade him to like a food factory or something?
I didn't even see that, to tell you the truth. But he was pretty good at the end of the year this year. They could use him, but I don't know the latest on him. Maybe Jake does.
Yeah,
I would not give him away. He's a good hitter.
Yeah, but just you got to keep him away from the turnpike and the
no glove. No glove.
No, he ate his glove. No, I have this thing. If you're going to be a major, and I know it's hard, and I know I'm a little tongue in cheek, but not so much. It was one of my beefs with Sabathia. I thought Sabathia could have pitched better and longer if he would have had a salad once in a while. And I think if you're getting millions of dollars to play a sport, for God's sake, stay in shape.
Well, CeCe always had some problems. He always had some weight problems. He's a big guy. He's like 6'7". Mm-hmm. I don't disagree, but, everybody's different. Some guys, it's very hard to take off the weight. But I agree at that level, and that's probably what maybe cut his career short a year or two because, when you're heavier, what does it really hurt the most? Especially if you're a pitcher, it's your knees, and that's exactly what happened to him.
Imagine being the knee that comes down on after he throws a pitch. I don't think his knee had arthritis. I think it ran away. Oh my God, no, he's throwing another pitch. Please don't do this to me. My guest is Steve Callis, Sports. Now, before he does his picks, Stephen, I want to give him the opportunity. That is Jake, and we're going to do Jake's picks officially, and you'll be here for it. We're not going to run the wheel yet. What first we want to do is do a little of our own analytics, if you will. Jake, what questions do you have for our guest?
I just cannot figure out this Cowboys-Eagles game. What say you? It started off at a 3.5-point spread. It's down to 2. So the bettors are going to the Eagles. I can't see it. Please explain it to me.
Well, I even in today's Daily News, it's down to 1.5.
Oh my God!
I think it must be maybe that problem with Dak's shoulder, and if he can't really play, the Eagles are saying, we don't really believe that, but if he's actually hurt, that changes the game. But I have to say, I thought the Eagles could win down in Dallas, Jake, and as you know, they got whomped like 37 or 38 to 10 or something. It was an embarrassment. And I do a spot every weekend down in Philly on Saturdays on 97.5 The Fanatic with Joe Stazak of ESPN Radio. Mm-hmm. I think I'm doing it 1:10 tomorrow, as a matter of fact. But they've been very lucky the last 2 weeks, in my mind, that they played the Giants and then they played Washington. They were losing both games. You remember that's the Eli game when they were up like 17-3.
Yeah.
So they came back late against both of those teams, and you say, finally, Carson Wentz leading them down the field to win a couple of games. And then you take a step back and say, well, wait a minute, it was the Giants and it was Washington. So I don't think that's going to happen with Dallas if they get behind Dallas 17-3 or something, or late in the game by 4 points as they were at Washington. I think they're in trouble. So much as it hurts me to say this, I kind of like Dallas. But I will call them the most underachieving team of the last 20 years, including this year, as a 500 team in the weak NFC
How
East.
Awful. It's just a limp to the finish, and they
Correct.
have to endure a playoff game.
Okay, folks, what you're hearing is the analytics between two sports geeks. And when I say analytics, they're discussing who's good, who's not, before Jake lays out his picks for the week. Jake, continue. What else are you going to speak with your rabbi about?
Rabbi, what else are you thinking this weekend? It's a great football weekend, and we're stuck with the Giants and the Jets. We have to leave to go to a satellite establishment.
It's kind of sad if you don't have DirecTV. It's kind of sad what's happened in football in New York in the last few years, and I'll include the Knicks, frankly, and even the Nets until they get Durant, and even hockey, Bob. Much as it hurts me to say that, unless you're an Islanders fan, it's been tough winters the last few years. But I do like Kansas City going into Chicago. -6. I understand it's hard to bet road favorites, but Mahomes looked like Mahomes in the snow last week for the first time, I'm going to say in about 6 weeks, because he's been hurt on and off.
Yep.
But he made some plays in the snow. So I like Kansas City. I like the Saints. I picked the Saints before the year to win the NFC, to win the whole NFC. And, Breeze is on fire. What can you say about him? Tennessee played well in losing, but they lost to the Texans. I like New Orleans -2.5.
What about the Monday night game? I love that Monday night game. I love the Packers. I don't care about the weather.
Because
5.5 points.
Yeah, Minnesota just can't beat Green Bay, or they're going to keep it close. Is that your theory?
Yes, that's my thought.
Yeah, I don't know. Cousins, his record against, when he's down in the fourth quarter. I think he won his first game ever as a Viking. He's 1-11 when they're losing in the fourth quarter or something. So I can see Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, I would probably take the points in that game. But the three games I like are Kansas City, New Orleans, and I think I'd probably take the Patriots because they beat Buffalo 16-10 in Buffalo. They showed a little running game, New England, for the first time. And if they can get a little running game, that's going to upgrade Brady, who has not been good. If you're looking for a drop-off, you've seen it in Brady the last 5 weeks. But I think that's a result of literally having no running game. They couldn't even run it on the Chiefs the week before, and they still almost won that game at the end. They had those weird calls, the touchdown that wasn't, the fumble that they picked up and would have run it back for a touchdown, but it was called down by contact. contact. So I think the Patriots are slowly sneaking up. I know it's hard for the Patriots to sneak up on anyone, but somehow I think by playoff time they'll be a better offensive team, and that gives them as good a shot as anybody, except probably Baltimore.
Well, that's it for the help from Steve Callis. Now, Steve Callis is going to listen in because it is time.
Likes the Saints,
Hold
the
on,
Patriots,
no,
and the
no.
Chiefs.
We'll get back to that, but first we need to segue. It is 8 o'clock, coming up on 8:01. It's time for this week's football picks by Jake Schaefer, as advised by the rabbi himself, Steve Callis. They're brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente Padrones and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Now, here, Steve, you stay with us. We've got the whole crew here. And Jake, do you want to make your picks first, or shall we run the wheel?
I'll go first. I like 2 Saturday games.
Who do you like? Pick first. Give us the teams. Who's playing?
I'm gonna go with Steve and Bud Poliquin. I locked it in. I'll take the Patriots, even though I hate it.
Over who?
They're at home, getting 6.5. They're giving 6.5 against the Buffalo Bills. I'll be rooting for the Bills, but.
Ooh,
I hate to do it, but I will take the Patriots at home.
Do you agree with that, Steven?
I do, yeah. That would be one of my picks this week. You know, they're 31-3 lifetime against Buffalo in the Brady Belichick era, and it's kind of hard to pick off of that. And again, they beat them by 6 in Buffalo. I think they can beat them by 7 in New England.
Okay, next.
All right, I will stay on Saturday. 49ers at home. I don't know anything about the Rams. I thought the Rams were really good. They're bad, then they're good.
Okay, give me the
Rams.
2 teams first. The Rams?
No, I will take the 49ers. Giving 6.5. They're at home. I'll take the 49ers.
So the 49ers, and you're giving 49ers
6.5
versus the Rams, and there's 6.5 here. So 6.5 again. Okay, so we've got the Bills, the 49ers, game 3.
I like the Saints. It's down to 2.5. The Saints
the
are
Saints
on the road.
over who?
They're on the road in Tennessee against the Titans. I like the Saints. They're playing. They need to win the game. They're a much better team. 2.5 is nothing.
You're giving it away?
Giving it away. Give me the Saints on the road in Tennessee. And then let's go to Monday night. Give me Aaron Rodgers on the road. Give me the 5.5 points. Give me the Packers. They're going to win the game, I think. 5.5 points is nothing. I like the Packers on the road against the Vikings in Minnesota.
So, okay, Green Bay against Minnesota. So, just to get it right, we have the Bills over the Pats, the 49ers over...
No, that's not what he picked.
Everyone likes the Pats.
Oh, you like the Pats?
Yeah, I hate to say
I thought you took the... Okay,
I'll
sorry.
be rooting for the Bills, but the Patriots are going to win.
Okay, now I got it. So, it's the Pats, the 49ers...
Saints... Packers.
And the Pack. Okay. Now, it's time for the wheel and to see how Jake does versus random selections. Are you ready, Jake? Are you ready, Steve Callis?
Yeah.
And the wheel runs. I'll have my hands up. We don't put our fingers on the wheel. And the random choice is...
Rams.
Rams. Okay. Now, it wanted the Rams. And what did you do with the Rams here? Where did you... Oh, wow.
I picked against the Rams.
Okay.
They
so
are on
the
the road
Rams.
against the 49ers.
Okay.
They are getting 6.5.
You're directly going against the wheel. All right. For game 2. And we spin. Ta-da. Go ahead.
Jaguars.
Jaguar. Well, you're not in your pick, but they got the Jags. What's their story?
The Jaguars are on the road. They're getting 7 against the Falcons
How
in
do you
Atlanta.
Okay. All right. So they got the Jags. Game 3, the random wheel. We're going to spin in the other direction. You know how that is, Steve. You're at the bazaar. You don't want it spinning the same way all the time. Stephen Callis is with us as well. Don't forget to listen to him tomorrow at 1:10 on the Philly Fanatic. What do you got?
Seahawks.
The Seabirds. Who are they? Okay. Well, who are they playing?
I like this game a lot, too. They are at home. They're getting 9.5. They're playing the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's a good pick for the wheel.
Okay, a big pick for the wheel. We're going to see who does better. What's your record right now, by the way? You want to tell people what your record is?
19, 17, and 1.
Oh, he's getting
Let's
close
just
to
get
5.
to the end. Let's just go over 500.
Okay, and the final pick for the wheel will go right to left, at least from where I'm spinning. Right we go. Merry Christmas. All right, what do you got? What do you got?
Vikings.
The Vikings, Minnesota. Who
Direct against myself.
Oh, the wheel likes the Vikings.
At home, giving 5.5 against Aaron Rodgers.
All right.
Hey, Bob, what's the Wheels record? Does anybody know?
The wheel's record's about a little under 500.
The wheel is 4-6.
Yeah, so I think the wheel versus Jake tomorrow is going to be, this weekend, is going to be significant because in 2 instances, the wheel won against the great Jake Schaefer. And one reminder...
Do you get double credit for that if you beat Jake straight up?
Yes, 2 points.
2 points. Yeah, we'll give him 2 points. This week's football picks were brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont, open 7 days. Now we can get Steve's. What do you think of his picks, Steven? Do you agree with all his picks? Because maybe we should.
I do, except I would pass on the 49ers-Rams game. The 49ers weirdly lost, I thought, to Atlanta last week, and the Rams got whomped by the Cowboys 44-21. So I don't know which 49ers team is showing up, and I don't know which Rams team is showing up, although I assume Jake would say he's picking the 49ers because they're playing at home.
And they have to play the game. They have to
the Rams,
win.
Yeah, the Rams certainly don't travel well, but, it's not like they're coming across the country or even going down to Dallas. So I don't know which Rams team is showing up. I don't know which Gurley is showing up. I think they've been bothered, if you will, since the Super Bowl, which became such a weird defensive battle after a year of offense. I don't think they've recovered from that. My theory is when you play the Patriots and you lose in the Super Bowl, you have severe problems in years after. I point to the Seattle game with the Butler interception. Seattle was never the same after that. I point to the Atlanta game when Atlanta was up 28-3 in the third quarter, where I actually went with my son, the Patriots fan. Poor parenting on my part, Bob.
What the heck is? What is that? What did you do to him? Did you lock him in a closet? What did you do?
No, I can tell you exactly what I did. I let him play Madden, and when he was like 7 years old, he liked Drew Bledsoe, and then Mo Lewis, who's been the MVP of the Patriots for the last 20 years, knocked Drew Bledsoe out, and then Tom Brady came in, so he just went with the flow, and he's been a diehard. He knows more about the Patriots. In fact, Joe Stazak in Philly, he has my son on when there's like a Patriots-Eagles game or the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. But I think those teams, Seattle and Atlanta and now the Rams, they lose in the Super Bowl to the Patriots, and they have not been the same since, any of them. Now, you can tell me Seattle's totally turned over, but they haven't won anything. You can tell me Atlanta, maybe it's Shanahan going to the 49ers. They've been terrible. And now this year the Rams have been what? Last year the Rams were the Golden Boy team with the coach and Gurley and Goff. And what are they now? They're struggling to make the playoffs. They have not been good this year.
All right, I have 2 other issues for you sports geeks before I let you go. Once again, it is 8:09. This is our special sports segment every Friday. We're joined by Steve Callis. And, Steve, I want you to promote whatever you've got coming up. I know you're on the Fanatic tomorrow down in Philadelphia. What are the call letters? When will you be on?
Oh, yeah, all you have to do is Google 97.5 The Fanatic, click on that, and then you'll see a little Listen Live button at the bottom. Right now I'm scheduled to be on at 1:10. Joe is on from 12 to 4. He's a walking history book on Philadelphia sports. I really like him. Just got hooked up by a buddy of mine a couple of years ago. So we do the podcast that Janelle will probably put up, I think, today. So the podcast that we do every week, which is Talk About Geeks, we just go 35, 40 minutes straight sports, mostly NFL.
Yeah.
We did a little baseball, so you can get that at WestchesterCountyPost.com. She puts that up every week, and it's a good listen if you're like the 3 of us are. That's what I'll say. And so I do that every week with him. We shoot a couple videos a week. Janelle's the videographer. She does everything. You know that, Bob. Editor,
I sure do.
It's incredible. But I just recently did a thing on, is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? I think
That's
the
a
answer
great
is yes.
idea. That's a great idea.
And then I did a great one. It's probably going to be up next week. So you know Roberto Clemente died on December 31st, 1972.
Know it very well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, maybe the greatest article I've ever written. And I don't usually say that about myself, as you know, but I wrote a very long article on Roberto Clemente because many years ago, and you may remember this, Bob, like 2005 or 6, Duke Snyder was on with Mike and the Mad Dog, and they were talking about the greatness of Clemente. And I think it was Russo said, well, you know, he really wasn't that great. He only had 240 home runs. And Duke Snyder said, well, wait a minute. He had tremendous power. Quote, he played in an airport, close quote. So I wrote a whole article trying to research to find Clemente's power, and you find out stuff that Sandy Koufax said about him, and Rogers Hornsby, who was a coach when Clemente played. It's great stuff. That'll be up next week. But maybe we'll talk next week when it's up, and I'll tell you it's well researched. And when you read it, I think you probably understand anyway. You know, he had tremendous power to the opposite.
I saw him
field
play a lot,
nobody did.
and he had a great arm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Great
His
arm. He had a rifle.
He had a gun for an arm.
You didn't run on him, man.
Yeah, and I'll just say this: Forbes Field, when he played at Forbes Field, was so big, kind of like the old Yankee Stadium, Bob. It was so big that they left the batting cage on the field in left center field during the games. That's what you need to know.
Did you ever
when
go?
You talk about Clemente.
Did you ever go to the old Polo Grounds where center field was like the clubhouse was out there? It was like 700 feet. My God, never saw anything like it.
That's correct. I did go a couple times when I was almost too small to remember. I know my dad said in the early '60s when the Mets came back, it'll never be like it was, of course, with the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Yankees all in New York. But he made it a point to take me to see Clemente, to see Willie Mays, to see Marichal, to see Koufax. Made a point. I don't think anybody went to see the Mets when they lost 120 games.
Although they had characters. You may have been too young. They had people that were in Choo-Choo Coleman and
they had Casey Stengel, the greatest character of all, right?
Hodges was at first base, Don Zimmer at third. It was a very Ron Hunt. They had an interesting collection. Marv Throneberry, Marvelous Marv, Ned Harkness. And they had the first guy who played pro hockey, who also pitched, Dennis Ryban, played for the Hamilton Red Wings in Major Junior A. And but that's because I'm so old.
I can tell you this, Bob, about the 62 Mets. I did not know this till years later, but their first batting coach in 1962 was Rogers Hornsby.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you. All right, listen, I had two other things I wanted to ask the two of you about, but I'm also going to remind you, in the new year, we start our podhockey.com podcast, and we'll have to have you on for that as well. And maybe your buddy from Philly, and I could ask him how much his Philadelphia Flyers almost destroyed my beloved game of hockey. But first, I love nuance, as you know, Stephen and Jake. And I read this piece that has stayed with me now for a month. When Patrick Mahomes dislocated his knee, a lot of people wrote that this is almost always that this becomes, depending on the degree of the severity, that this becomes a chronic problem and it'll go out again and again. A, have you read that? B, are there concerns about Patrick Mahomes?
I can tell you what I read. What I read was if he came back too early, he had much higher chance of doing it again immediately. They kept him out an extra week, but they still brought him back a week early. And as I said, this is the first time the Chiefs game in the snow that he looked like Patrick Mahomes to me.
Yeah.
I don't know about the future stuff, except, for example, if you get a concussion, the odds are better, frankly, that you're going to get another concussion, and it sounds like that may be true with the dislocation of the knee, but it hasn't happened yet, and I think that was the fear for this season for the Chiefs.
Okay, because he's just such a great talent. I just hope that he can continue to do this. Now, something that and I want to get Jake to comment on, this great quarterback who likes to run. Jackson. Do you think, as Jake does, that his career will be shortened because he likes to run, and it will be, I think you used RJ as the example? RG3. What's your take on that?
Well, I do, because when you look at the Peyton Mannings and Tom Brady's of the world, and you're essentially, and the Drew Brees and the Aaron Rodgers, who has more mobility than the prior three, I think the problem is now, can you do this for 10, 12, 15 years? Just the general aging in and of itself, coupled with, as Jake said, these guys, Lamar Jackson, the last time I watched him play, he took a pounding a couple of times. I mean,
that's what
shots where you go, "Ooh, I hope he can get up," type things. You look at a Michael Vick, for example, who's really one of the few examples. It's not like a Fran Tarkenton was scrambling behind the line of scrimmage for 5 minutes and throwing a pass, although, of course, he played in a different era. But I think Jake is right. I think it's going to be hard. If we're talking playing into your late 30s, A, I don't think they'll be able to be as mobile as they are now, obviously. B, I think long before that they're going to get beat up, and they better work on their offensive lines every year as long as they're there, because if your offensive line gets a little leaky, that's a big problem for these running quarterbacks. But right now, Mahomes has mobility. He's right about RG3. I remember that rookie year when he was in that playoff game, and they brought Kirk Cousins in off the bench, and then RG3 came back in and hurt his knee again in the same game. And frankly, he's never been the same. And you know who the backup to Lamar Jackson is? RG3.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's interesting. All right.
Or be built like Donovan McNabb.
Well, he was built like me.
He could take a hit.
He was built like me.
Exactly.
I mean, a rock.
Yeah.
Now, apropos of all of this, do you think that you mentioned that you're going to be doing a show about it and a write-up about it? I want to go to your the issue you brought up earlier, which is, can my boy Eli Manning, the man who brought me back to football, do you think he's Hall of Famer or borderline, Jake?
100%. Oh, go ahead, Jake. I'm sorry.
Jake first.
He's a Hall of Famer. But do you think he will retire after this year?
I think he wants to play. I think he thinks he can still play. And if he's of that mindset, then I guess that victory over Miami now. He did play pretty well. He made some great throws. He would
look good in a Chicago Bears jersey, right?
Well, you know what? If they want to win, that's the kind of team he needs to go to.
Exactly.
And with a great defense, I won't say he only has to be a game manager, because he's more than that, but that's what they're looking for. And if you think if you're the Bears and you think the window is closing, you better get somebody in, because Trubisky now, after 3 years, doesn't appear to be the answer. But, yeah, I did a video on Eli Manning. I think Janelle has it up. If it's not up yet, it'll be up today. And essentially I stole from Kurt Warner. I don't know if I said this to you guys the other day, but Kurt Warner, who you know, Bob, Eli Manning replaced Kurt Warner. Remember that? The Giants were 5-4. And I remember writing an article. They waved the white flag and they swore that they didn't. Eli came in. The Giants were potentially a playoff team. Eli went 1-6.
Got pounded.
Now, if you believe that was the beginning of the foundation of winning 2 Super Bowl MVPs, great. But I wrote a lot of stuff. For example, tell me if you knew this. Eli Manning is 7th all time in passing yardage in NFL history. That has to count for something. I know his record's only 500, but he beat the evil empire twice, including maybe the greatest team ever, the 18. Well, that's for my son, because I'm sure he'll listen to this eventually, Bob.
I got it. Your son. I got to get him on. I'm beginning to love this kid.
You'll love him, and he's done some radio. It's really funny. He's a PhD student up at Cornell now, but he was a labor union organizer for 3 years because he wants to help home health care workers.
Wait a minute. You have a son that's a PhD candidate. There's help for all of us, no matter what your parentage. Clearly.
That's correct. And I got a daughter who graduated from Williams and got a master's degree at the London School of Economics.
Yeah, good for her. Yeah, look, I get it. My daughter's smart, too. She's a microbiologist. She did not get those genetics from me. Listen, I have another minute, and I have so many questions for both of you guys. This is really, it's about hockey, but I want you to relate it to football. 3 coaches have already been fired for abusing players. Does it go on in football? Are we opening up a Pandora's box, looking back 10, 15 years at the way coaches treat players?
Well, look at Tom Kaufman.
Well, I don't know what's going on with Tom Coughlin down in all of a sudden 25% of his players.
He got fired this week, Tom
Yes.
Coughlin.
But he got fired, they say, because 25% of the players or 25% of the complaints to the union came out of his organization. How
if
can
you
that
do
be?
the math, it should be 3% out of every team.
No, but what I'm saying is, our coaches, do
25.
coaches call people by horrible names in football? Do they call them cowards and kick at them and hit them? Hockey coaching is for years has been brutal, but is it in football as well?
I would think yes. You think of a guy like Parcells. Coughlin is as old school as you can get. You know the story. If you come like right at the meeting time, you're late. You're supposed to be there 5 minutes early. Parcells was like that too. But Coughlin gets the credit for, again, beating the Evil Empire twice in the Super Bowl. And that's coupled with what he did at Jacksonville. You know, he started Jacksonville that one year. They were 14-2. He's going to the Hall of Fame, I think. But this, you know, he finds somebody $700,000 for not showing up to some meetings that were not mandatory. And
you gotta love him.
You know, under the collective bargaining agreement, I think these older guys don't understand like collective bargaining agreements are like binding on both sides. But I think it's still prevalent in football. The football mentality, to me, even at the lower levels, high school and college, you see a lot of screaming. You're not going to see Woody Hayes grabbing guys by the helmet and pulling them towards them. You're not going to see Mike Rice's anymore, even though that was only a few years at Rutgers, throwing basketballs at people. It's totally different, certainly, from when I was a kid. You know this, Bob. I played for Brendan Malone. He was the baseball and basketball coach at Power Memorial, where I went to high school, and then he coached 30 years in the NBA. He was a tough guy, and he couldn't do today what he did back then, and most coaches couldn't. No, most coaches couldn't.
I had a coach in the 60s, great hockey coach, who actually turned me into a coach as well. He said things to me that I can never repeat on the air. But my favorite used to be, he had a real Brooklyn accent, even though he played up in Canada and all that. But he used to say, "Hey, Robert." When they say it like that, like as if there's no R in it. "Hey, Robert, for a smart guy, you're pretty bleeping stupid." Where did you go to school? Where did you go? Did you go to school? Did you graduate? Did you see? Boy. Did you see that there's a blue line there? You didn't see that? How could you? It's blue. It's blue. Anyway. Steve, it is always a pleasure. We will listen in to you tomorrow. We'll look for your videos posted. He's a sports broadcaster and writer. He's done a wonderful video on Eli Manning. You'll find it on the WestchesterCountyPost.com. He's the sports editor as well. Thank you very, very much.
Great to be with you both as always.
Always. And, of course, Jake's Picks of the Week, and it has been brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Let's take a look at the weather. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It is 24 degrees. Going to get up to 33 today, sunny, but it'll average out about 31. Tonight, a few clouds. The temperature going down to 17 again. You'll need 10 kimonos. It's been cold. Saturday, things begin to, relatively speaking, warm up. A mix of sun and clouds. The temperature averaging about 33. Sunday, a virtual heat wave. Sunny again, the high 44, overnight low 33, so it'll never go below freezing on Sunday. Monday, still warmer, mostly sunny skies, getting up to 50, the overnight low 35. Next Tuesday, Christmas Eve, mostly sunny skies, the high 45, the overnight low 32. And on Christmas itself, partly sunny, the high will be 43 degrees. Oh, look who's calling in right on time. One of our favorite guests, and we will get to him in a moment. He is, of course, Dr. Victor Sternberg. But first, the top of the hour, actually the bottom of the hour as we head into it now, is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. It is 8:24, and our next guest, he was busy last week. Actually, he was ill. I think he's feeling much better these days. He's been teaching dentistry while he's, of course, running his own practice. He is a periodontist by trade, but also a political analyst and the longtime host of Politics in Your Health, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg. He's a regular guest with us, and one day you'll be hearing from him again, and you'll be asking him the questions you always have. Dr. Sternberg is, while a periodontist by trade, he is committed to prevention, to better health, and also how the politics of this great nation affects and impacts your health and the cost of health care. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Victor Sternberg. Good morning, doctor. Whoops.
It's not the doctor.
Oh, I thought it was. Well, that's still, yeah. Anyway, welcome to the program. And by the way, yes, we did the story about what's-her-face running for office.
Oh, okay. What's-her-face, I think, has a good chance.
Yes, I just, look, I keep changing. I just did a tease for a doctor. What's her name? Come on, help me out. You sent me a text.
Catherine Parker.
Right, Catherine Parker. Thank you very much. She's number 10 in the race. But everybody tells me the guy who's going to win is Buchwald.
Yeah. Have you ever, Buchwald's a nice guy.
I had him on.
But Bob, have you ever watched paint dry?
Yeah, I know. I had him on, and he was not Mr. Excitement.
Mr. Boring. Now, that's not a terrible thing, by the way. It's tough to win elections, but having someone who's boring isn't necessarily having someone bad who's in the Congress. But I'm not sure he's going to be able to generate, at the end of the day, the excitement some of the other candidates, including Catherine Parker, are going to get.
Go ahead. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here.
Who do you like in the race? Now, we should, full disclosure, you're very involved in the Democratic Party. You're an insider in many ways. I don't know that it affects the congressional races, but who do you like in the race? Who does your party like, or is there no horse in this race yet?
I don't know. Look, I know a lot of very liberal people like the gentleman from Rockland. I forget his name, who was the first announced candidate, a lawyer. But look, I think it's not my district anymore, but I think Catherine Parker is going to be a force to reckon with. Buchwald will be a force to reckon with. But Catherine Parker is an interesting candidate. She's going to have strong support on the Sound Shore. She knows how to run a race. Female, being female, I think in this year is going to help her. And her politics are such that I think she would do well in Rockland also. So I think she's going to be one of the leading candidates. Buchwald, you're absolutely correct, but I don't think anybody in the party has gotten behind any one person yet.
No, but the smart money is Buchwald, and what a wonderful organization. I mean, you call these people, they get right back to you. I'm just not used to that. Listen, we have to go to the doctor. Any final comments?
The only final comments is give him my best, and I look forward, and I'm going to listen to him because he's always has good information for us guys.
Well, thank you. And again, we will be making him available to you again for phone calls as we move forward into the new year. Trust me.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, Mitchell. And we go. I've already given him his introduction, and we had calls crossed, but that works. Please welcome, without further ado, and join us in wishing him a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and all the wonderful holiday goodness, because he's one of my favorite people. Dr. Victor Sternberg, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bob, and same to all your listeners. Hopefully this coming holiday season will provide some healing of our very divided country.
We can hope. How are you feeling? You still sound a little raspy, Doc.
I'm a little raspy. I still have a little residual hoarseness from this bronchitis I got, but I'm feeling well physically. It's been a very tough end of the year physically for a lot of my wife was sick, I was sick, and we're finally having them in, but I still feel like I'm a little like a frog inside my throat.
Well, that's okay. It's given you an even deeper. You always had a good radio voice, but it's even deeper now. So take the good with the bad. Doctor, so much going on in the world of health. I don't know even where to begin, but we had some callers today earlier talking about the vaping problem, which you were way out ahead of. Why can't we seem to get this legislation done to get this stuff off the market until it's tested?
Bob, you're asking the existential question of how our government works. We have had decades of evidence. I mean, let's go back maybe 60, 70 years that smoking causes cancer and emphysema and early death. And yet we just passed a law today, this week, to raise the smoking age to 21. We've been facing this issue since the 50s. You tell me why the U.S. Congress and the executive branch, and the answer is obvious, why they cannot regulate certain industries for the best benefit of the American public. It's the enormous influence of corporate finance effects on congressmen and senators. That's the bottom line. That's why we haven't done it. We could talk all day. They just passed a law. So he's age 21, right? We have known that smoking causes these diseases for how many decades? We know that we right now have about 75 or 80 people have died from vaping, and 2,000 have been hospitalized. We have no clear evidence that vaping makes people smoke less. We do know vaping introduces marijuana in higher amounts to people, and that is detrimental. So where is our FDA that's to protect us? Where are legislatures to keep our kids from being exposed to things, even things vaping, let alone opioids? Where are they? And you know, Bob, you and I know that companies like Purdue Pharmaceutical and other drug companies have the ability to bend the ears of too many congressmen and senators. So they have failed us. The people who serve us have failed us completely when it comes to healthcare.
You know, on local levels as well. The other day, I'm down in New Jersey, and I check out one of their newspapers, and their Senate, not their assembly, if you will, but their Senate got intimidated by protesters who wanted to maintain the religious exemption for vaccinations. How can they be so feckless? How can they be such quislings, knowing that they put at risk other people? I'm appalled.
Bob, go back to the tenets of your question. How can they be? They are feckless because they put their own personal interest ahead of the people. The very words that were echoed by John Adams at the beginning of our nation. He feared that future politicians would put their own interest ahead of those of the people. Those people in office, and almost, I'm painting everyone with one brush, but primarily are interested in getting reelected.
Which is so unfortunate. That is not what our forefathers wanted. It is 8:32. Our guest, Dr. Victor Sternberg, longtime host of Politics and Your Health. Doctor, there was an article in one of the magazines I use for sources that could have come from you, and I don't know if you saw it. It's called Clean Teeth, Healthy Heart. If you want to reduce your risk of heart failure, always remember to brush your teeth. That's the conclusion of a new study from South Korea. And this was a real study, 161,000 people, ages 40 to 79. Now, you've talked about this open. What is the relationship between gum health, brushing your teeth, and your heart?
Well, it has to do with inflammation. Inflammation anywhere in the body seems to exaggerate the atherosclerosis. So they believe, people who studied heart disease believe that more than 50% of heart disease is due to inflammation in the body, causing the inner linings of the blood vessels to be more prone to developing fat or blockage. So anywhere there's inflammation in the body, there is an increased amount of atherosclerosis. Periodontal disease, inflammation of your mouth, increases the amount of inflammation in your body. That's number one. Number two, the bacteria in your mouth as you brush, if you have gum disease, those bacteria enter your bloodstream. Now, for most of them, they don't cause infections in most of us because our body will destroy the bacteria. But some of them can settle on these damaged vessels in the lining of our heart. And there is a belief that those bacteria settling there, again, increase the inflammation of the arteries and increase the deposition of fat. So anytime there is increased inflammation in the body, there is increased possibility of having increased heart disease.
How is it, that something in the human body that was designed to help us, which is namely this irritation, this inflammation, how is it managed over these millennia to become hurtful to us? Do we understand that?
Inflammation is a normal, healthy process.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Here's the problem: when it becomes chronic, so instead of you get, let's say, when I get my bronchi got inflamed from a bacterial viral, but my body fights it. Eventually, the inflammation is caused, produce mucus. But when eventually my immune system or antibiotics will suppress that inflammation by eliminating the cause, my body returns to normal. If the inflammation becomes chronic, where it never stops, there's something called C-reactive protein. and it's a measure of inflammation in your body. You've had it done. You probably don't know. The doctor never told you. It measures the chronic, how much is a measure of inflammation. When that number is constantly elevated, which my own son who has heart disease had a very elevated level, that chronic, constant inflammation where the body is constantly putting out all of these proteins, amino acids that are fighting infection, they begin to become destructive to the tissue when they're never resolved. It's the fact they never go away. Not that the body responds appropriately, but it's fighting a battle. It's like having a battlefield. When the battle is going on, the bullets are being shot 24/7 for years.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of dead people. Same thing.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And one of my big beefs, and we've been on the air together now 5 or 6 years, and I'm still waiting. I think you said they have a test now. And this popped in my head this morning. I was doing one of those on this date pieces, and Bobby Darin died of a heart attack at the age of 37. And I'm saying, how the hell does that happen? 37. They still that we in this day and age don't have a better test for arteriosclerosis. Yeah. It just I know now they have a new, less invasive scan.
Yes.
All right, but
a virtual angiogram. Yes, that is for any people, any of your listeners who have concerns of family history of heart disease or risk factors, diabetes, they've been smokers. They should consider getting a virtual angiogram, because the only other measure is an arteriogram, which is a surgical procedure done in a hospital, and they're not going to do it just because you want it done. But the virtual one can pick up significant changes before you have a heart attack.
Yeah, I got to have one of those. I really do. Playing skating after hockey pucks while I'm approaching 70 probably wouldn't be a bad idea, would it? Doctor, we had a gentleman on this morning from a company called Vanguard, and they do studies of doctor evaluations. In other words, when someone goes on the website and says, I give you 1 star or 5 stars, and they compared them to restaurants and other service entities, doctors didn't fare too well. But what was interesting is doctors either got a 5 or 1, and the bottom line is something you've talked about often. It had more to do with being nice to the patient and spending time with them than it did efficacy. Is it getting better? Is it getting better or worse?
That's a question, looking at it from the standpoint of my career and people in my profession. I would say in general it's getting worse. I think the ability of and willingness of individuals who spend years in school to also remember, as I tell my students, that remember you're treating a person with teeth. You're not treating teeth with people. Well, the same thing happens for a physician. You're treating a person with a heart disease. You're treating an individual that has a problem in medicine and dentistry and other health professions. We are trained to treat the problem. We are not, our mentors, who are very good at treating problems, are not necessarily evolved in treating people. So you go to a physician, and I've been, my experience, I've had it personally, I become my skin, I become my belly, I become my heart. I don't become a person. Mm-hmm. And so the inability to relate to me as a person prevents me from having a connection to that healthcare provider. And all I want to know is, I'm okay, goodbye, I'll never see you again. That's what's happening. It's a cultural change that we become so specialized in looking at this part of the body that the people who are humanistic are not the ones that go into these fields anymore. So yes, the answer is it's getting worse, not better.
And when you go, and the bigger the practice, the more impersonal. For example, a lot of physicians' assistants or even just office help, they ask irrelevant questions when you go in before you get to the doctor. I used an analogy today, but it's true. You can go into a doctor that you were seeing. I'm going to pretend it's an orthopedic surgeon. And I've been seeing him about my hip, but I just walked in and my arm is hanging 4 inches off my shoulder because I just broke my shoulder blade. And the kid that you walk in who does the original information will see that, and I'm in immense pain, but will still say to me, so tell me, what's the pain in your hip right now? And it's cookie cutter. It's ridiculous. Why is this happening? Why aren't they hiring better people up front that don't understand context?
Because, again, let's get back to the nature of the healthcare system, or many of our systems. That what are they driven by, Bob? Right now, the healthcare profession
money
is driven by the fact that people doctors reimbursement from insurance and Medicare, and the debt of people who have enormous debt. You have to generate income. To generate income, you have to see more people because you're fixed. What you can charge a patient, at least under medical care, is limited by what the insurance or the healthcare provider pays. So with a tremendous pressure at lower fees, you're going to have to spend less time with people.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, a doctor sitting down with you for an hour talking about your lifestyle and your history, even if he was intending to do that because he's a humanist, he can't afford to do it. So you have a double whammy: the nature of our health professionals' mentalities and the nature of the economic reimbursement system creates less time with the doctor and often less connection.
840, Dr. Victor Sternberg, our guest, the longtime host of Politics in Your Health. You always give me good segues. A piece in the Washington Post by Stephen Pearlstein: insurers and hospitals love secret prices. I'll paraphrase the first paragraph. Price transparency in healthcare is one issue where the Trump administration may have actually got it right, said Pearlstein. As costs skyrocket, the Department of Health and Human Services is proposing new rules that would require hospitals to publish their, quote, minimum and maximum rates for 300 common services. Why is this such a problem?
Bob, because once you see, there's two issues. Once when you see, my God, going in to have this procedure done, when you add up all the cost of using the hospital bed and every drug they give you, the sticker shock, they're afraid, is going to make people want to shop around, which will put pressure on hospitals to start competing. So one of the issues that what prevents it, it's the desire of the institutions not to let people know that the charges they are receiving, either directly or through the insurance company, are off the scale. It's as long as it's kept secret,
mm-hmm.
you will not know that when they give you an aspirin pill, that pill costs $12.
Oh, God.
That's the way it is. It's the way, Bob, this is a system that's gone on because it's one of the tremendous drivers of healthcare. The efficiency of hospitals. My friend was in the hospital now with 45 days with a serious infection in his leg. And of those 45 days he spent there, the actual infection was dealt with for maybe 10
mm-hmm.
days.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the time he sat there or was in rehab doing nothing, and now his leg is getting amputated. After all of that time, that hospital was reimbursed probably about $10,000 a day for a man to sit there for 35 days for nothing because they couldn't say the following: this leg is infected, we cannot save it, so we either have to amputate it or you have to go home and deal with it yourself. Because as long as every day sits in that bed, they get a check for $10,000. There's no incentive for them to send them anywhere else. It's the way it is, Bob.
Wow. Okay, Doctor, as we pass through 8:43, Dr. Victor Sternberg, our guest, what arrows do you have in your quiver? You always come with stuff on your mind. What's bugging you?
I'm going to read the letter that I got yesterday from a patient. Very interesting letter. Dear Dr. Sternberg, as a longtime patient, I'm compelled to tell you the following. My 19-year-old daughter had all 4 wisdom teeth extracted at a certain office. While the procedure went well, I and my daughter were horrified and alarmed that she was prescribed an opioid, Percocet, for pain management, even though she did not have a complaint of discomfort. I was neither verbally counseled nor provided with an alternative, like ibuprofen or Tylenol as a combination, which I've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
As an avid reader of your columns, I was well aware of the dangers of opioids and the negative effects of drug addiction on families and our society because of indiscriminate prescription being written, particularly in light of this current opioid crisis. I was, for obvious reasons, I did not pick up the prescription. While this one prescription did not lead to addiction, why take a chance? I cannot stress the importance of educating the public and medical providers with alternatives to pain management. Now, here's an example right in our neighborhood where doctors have heard all of this information about opioids,
mm-hmm.
and where I had not been at all prescribing anything for 14 years other than ibuprofen, that we have people today, this week, still neglecting the information and prescribing narcotics.
Good grief. Well, at least that person wrote to you about it, and there's some progress there. What else do you have?
Okay, well, let me just tell you something interesting. I just read an article recently that there's a large increase in people dying from meth. 13,000 people now, doubled in the last couple of years, and that's increasing the number of deaths because people take meth have start beginning to ingest other narcotics more so. Most of the meth comes from Mexico. Okay, one of the few things I approve that the president did in terms of declaring drug dealers terrorists is that south of the border we have a country that is essentially a failing nation because the amount of power that cartels have, both to kill, they've killed up to date, I think 35,000 people have been murdered already, and they really pay off politicians and police, allows them to continue unabated, put poison in our society. You know, are they terrorists? Yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of way to have terrorists. One is that comes with a machine gun and kills people, and the other is one that pollutes your society with drugs. They both have the same outcome for our society. And you know, when El Chapo was on trial, it didn't get a lot of follow up. But one of the people testifying said that El Chapo gave the former president, who just left office of Mexico, $100 million to stay away from the cartels.
Wow.
Now you tell me, what does that leave us as a country? Do we just allow this to go on? It's not about building walls to keep out drugs, because nothing is going to keep the drugs out. It'll get around the wall. It'll get under the wall. I'm not talking about people. I don't want to get into that issue. I'm talking about they will get here, because as long as there's a profit motive, there's going to be narcotics coming into our country, and this is not going away, Bob.
You know, Doctor, when we talk about south of the border and some of the other countries and healthcare, et cetera, what kind of healthcare do they have down in Mexico? When we see and in Central America, I mean, obviously, most of these states in that that continent are failed states, and I've never really been able to get my head around why. But having said that, do they have better health care at least? Do they have good health care?
No. The only country I think that has free and maybe adequate health care for the populace is Cuba.
I was going to say that Cuba does. Wow.
They've been able to set up something that takes care of it. But you know, the flip side of it is, you know, the people earn no money, the people have no freedom, but they get health care.
They get health care and an education. Yeah, it's weird. Right. Dr. Victor Sternberg, our guest. Doctor, a couple of other questions that I have, but first I want to be sure we answer and get out there anything that you have.
Yes, I have one other issue I want to bring up, and it happens to come up that there is a statistic came out yesterday that there are 426 million accounted for guns in the United States. 426 million. That's 1.5 guns for every person in this country, almost. Now, do you in any way think that with that many guns, you're going to any way stop continued carnage in our country? Just as if there was opioids in every corner, in every department store, every drugstore, where you could pick up an opioid anywhere you wanted to and use it, would you not be surprised there are dead people from opioids? So I think this argument, and I've made it before, that because we have a significant number of unhealthy or sociopath people in this country, and you add 426 million guns, having dead people is an expected outcome. It's not a surprise. These morons and animals that went into that deli in New Jersey City, they had tons of weapons. Well, that's true. So there's nothing amazing. Just like you asked me why we still have not dealt with this vaping, for the same reason we haven't dealt with guns. Politically, those people who would vote against any gun control are more concerned about losing voters, just like and support financially from the company, just like the tobacco. It is the inordinate power of lobbyists to control the fact that we have too many guns and we have too many drugs. And it's not. I don't see it changing, Bob. I used to think this change is possible. I listen to debates. So on the Republican side, there's no discussion. Democrats promise a lot of stuff. I'm not sure they've been able to deliver it. We've had a couple of Democratic presidents, 8 years of President Obama. We had 8 years of President Clinton. So nothing changed during that period. So I don't know if it's going to ever change.
What we did see, going back to the Obama administration, only because it's apropos of this discussion, is Obamacare, but yet the current administration continues. Now, they're only chipping away, but to chip away at it, I am yet to get my head around what it is, and this is now going on to 14, 12 years. What do the Republicans want for health care? The president said he would come in, repeal and replace, but replace it with what? I've never heard it. I've never gotten my head around it. Why is it not out there? Why is it not proposed?
Look, the Republican Party has run on a platform that any socialized medicine of any sort is not in the interest of the American quality pre-enterprise system. And they have certain key points. One is guns. One is healthcare. Remember, that's been a rallying cry to get this man elected. Was we will repeal and replace
but replace it with what? I'm going to say this till I'm blue in
Bob,
the face.
They will not come up with something because there is nothing to replace it with. You know, my private insurance here in Westchester County for a family of three is $32,000 a year for Oxford Insurance.
Yep.
That's private insurance.
Yep.
So obviously that's what they want to replace it with. They want to have private insurance for this kind of inane amount of money. And there's no easy answer. I'm not going to give you an answer, Bob. It's easy to control healthcare costs. If I did that, I would be either stupid or lying to you. However, we have not had a conversation by anybody in this country at a level that's really reasonable of what are we going to do with the spiraling cost of healthcare? What's a reasonable way to deal with it? Why do we spend twice as much per person in this country to other countries and don't have better outcomes? That's the beginning of the question. The second, a parallel question is, why do we spend more on education than any other country in the world? And we're way down on the list of countries that are doing well in academics.
Well, that's
These are questions that have got to...
Well, in that case, we politicized education to the point of failure. I mean, what's going on? I view New York City, okay, the way we viewed during the last year during the measles crisis, the way we viewed Rockland County, which is, God, I hope the virus doesn't spread here, with how they're running their schools and how they've let politics ruin the educational system in that city. I worry about it because we've had it here. It infiltrates. Our own school district. It's surrounding it. It's like an infection being kept at bay with the aforementioned system of irritation. But I don't know how, with politics involved in it, we can fix education either, Doctor, to be honest.
No, I think you hit it on the head. And I think because, listen, Bob, if educational reform, anytime you want to significantly change the system, there's going to be a powerful opposition. Like, for instance, if I proposed that school districts that have underperforming children have a longer school year, have a longer school day, have small classes, and we spend more money in those districts because those kids who are not getting an education, those particular targeted urban kids, will end up becoming issues in our society one way or other. Okay. You're going to get enormous pushback by unions that want to go longer school years. How are you going to pay them? By parents who don't want their kids going to school longer. You know, we get into if I told you, Bob, I have this great idea to keep you healthy. I'm going to give you 3 things you must do every single day, whatever it is, and it's going to change the way you behave. You're going to say, I don't want to do that. It's not necessary. Mm-hmm. There's a normal opposition to any change that's going to impact the status quo.
Or even the political and the agenda-driven. Doctor, you are now on, because you mentioned an urban neighborhood, as true as it is, you're close to being by some labeled a racist because you brought up culture. And so if we keep putting these red flags there, we can't really examine the issue. I mean, 80% of the problems with some of the kids that won't be educated will have to do with their parents, and we dare not go there.
We just had a horrible murder in Manhattan.
Yeah, 13-year-old. Yeah, absolutely.
So here's the question. If I was mayor of New York City, we all have tremendous sympathy for the family, and we can't bring that girl back to life, obviously. The first place I would go as the mayor of New York, I'd go visit that boy's family, the 13-year-old boy. I would want to know what caused a 13-year-old child, what environmental issues caused a 13-year-old child to become a murderer. Because if you don't find out what's going on, and you just wring your hands and figure out should we try him as an adult or a child, there's obviously an illness in our culture that allows 13-year-old children to become criminals.
You know, and it affects everything. You know, I've never gotten over the killing up in Newtown. And this is a horrible thing to say, but I was always grateful that that boy shot his mother first. Because what she was doing, buying guns for this clearly dangerous kid, and the fathers always get off the hook. You know, he should, wherever the hell that guy is who divorced her, you know, out there living well, I got away and I work in the city. You know, he's got to answer for this too. How did you let this boy with all these kinds of delusions and guns, really? So and that we're willing to look at it, but in the more systematic issues, we have a hard time looking at because the far left will come out and say, "Oh, don't you dare look at the culture in these neighborhoods, you racist, you."
Well, you know, Bob, if you read the book I told you about, Hillbilly Elegy, you'll remember that the same dysfunctional culture is in a white area.
Oh,
of
yeah,
Appalachia.
it doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. It
generational.
Really,
yes. It's not a color issue.
I know it's not.
It is
but
the issue of our certain segment of our society does not function.
Right, and it has to do with parents. I mean, there are some studies that are incredible. For example, if you have just 3 books in the home, your kid's likely to go to college, things like that. We have all these things we can associate. But what troubles me the most is that people don't want standards. They find standards somehow to be indicative of white supremacy. Imagine if you didn't have to pass the test to be a doctor or a lawyer or an airline pilot, or if we bent the curve depending on your background. No, you don't put a level on competence on your background. You put it on what it takes to do that thing, and it's so counterintuitive what they're doing in the education system in New York City that I want to bang my head against the wall.
Bye, honey. Listen, Bob. There's a very good article in the Times about 2 weeks ago about an American couple that moved to Finland.
Yeah.
And they describe what it was like in Finland, okay? And you know, they went to all the things the Finns did to improve education, from being poor to being excellent to healthcare, all the things. But they have a free enterprise system about it. They're not a socialist system.
Yes.
The way it works in Finland, there are 2 variables that don't exist here. Number one, they are willing to pay more in taxes to get an educational system through college and healthcare that are affordable to people. So they're willing to pay more taxes. That means you and I and all of us, number one. Number two, and this is probably the biggest struggle, they are mostly all Finns who see the collective good of their society is more important than what they pay in taxes. The collective good, if you use those words in our culture, the collective good, you're called a socialist or communist, right?
Yep.
But they're not communists, they're not socialists. They just have a common belief in the well-being of their citizens, whether they be black, green, or blue. Mm-hmm. So when I say increase the education in Harlem or whatever bad, poor performing schools are, I'm saying it because these are Americans that need more help than others need. The kids in Scarsdale do not need to spend more on education. Mm-hmm. There's no relationship between what they spend in Scarsdale and how the outcome of the children will be. But in Harlem or Bed-Stuy, wherever the neighborhoods are struggling, there is a relationship. And I've seen it in charter schools, and I don't want to go into the debate, where you have smaller classes, you have longer school days, you have more intensive education where everybody's on board. There are better outcomes.
Doc, can I go to an uncomfortable place here? I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're talking with Dr. Victor Sternberg. What about when you're an educator, and I know there's no easy answer, but we have to go there, when the reason is the parents are irresponsible, incompetent, terrible parents, or worse, abusive parents? Because at the end of the day, that's going to be the larger problem. How do we manage that? What do we do about it? You can't. This is a free society. How do you go in and tell? Like we've got schools that want to look the other way when they're late. They want to look the other way when they're absent. They want to look the other way when they're violent, because all roads lead back home, and they don't have any power to deal with the home.
Yeah. Bob, you're talking about how do you deal with a segment of the society in which their culture is not going to be productive to having children that are ready to be educated, and that is a very serious problem that requires. It's well beyond my pay grade. I could have opinions about it, but I know that those are issues. But I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you the flip side of it, Bob. yes, there's going to be children who come from dysfunctional homes to the point where they will not be educatable by our system. I get that. And some of them will be disruptive. We used to remove those kids from class and put them in a special class because we wouldn't want to destroy the education for the other children. In these charter communities, with charter schools that are in Harlem, in inner cities around the country, where they go to public schools one day, and the next day they go across the street to a school that has a different attitude. Those same students who are failing to get an education in one school do get an education in another. Now those kids are educatable, but they're not getting the education they need because they need a different kind of education. The child this young boy who killed these people, this beautiful girl, we can't do anything about that. That kid already has, for whatever reason, he is now out of the mainstream of emotional well-being. But we cannot look just like these mass killers. I mean, this boy up in Newtown. Okay, he's mentally ill. Okay, he went and killed 26 people. We cannot change that. The mother could have not had guns, and that's a whole other story. Just like the example would be in inner cities that are having high degrees of violence. My opinion would be you would stop everybody in the street and look for weapons because you want to save lives.
There's something even more fundamental here, and I guess it goes off the bandwidth of what we're talking about. But what some people think is important in life, fundamental to culture, is at the root of it. There was a story I did a week ago. It depressed me for 2 days, and you probably read about it. A guy who was the boyfriend of a woman of a woman who had a young boy, and he didn't just beat this kid. He would beat him with a rod. He broke more. They said he had more broken ribs when he died than he had ribs. He had more breaks in his ribs. He would put him in ice cold showers. He would hit him. He would constantly beat him. And the last day that he beat him and put him in a cold shower, he hung him on a hook. Now, let's just say that somehow the kid survived and goes to school. Child Protection Services, however much money it is, has got to take that kid away from that person and find a better way for foster care. And that woman didn't deserve the right to have a child. Doesn't deserve. Well, you can't take that away. She should not have been a mother of that child. And unless we look that stuff in the eye, this stuff is never going to end.
Bob, we have a struggle in America. It's called the rights of the individual versus the goodness of society.
Well, what about this young boy? What about his rights? What about his life?
You know what? We put parental rights often ahead of the goodness of children. Look, having children is the most naturally human process, but it is a privilege to be a parent, and it has a huge responsibility. But we don't see it that way. We struggle, Bob. You know what? This is if you really want to get philosophical, a society will only be as successful as the mental well-being of the people that make it up.
Well, yeah, of course. And then you look at it. Speaking of, if I may, fostering children. Most of the people that I've met that foster children do it for the money.
Yeah.
For the extra couple.
Bob, you know what? I have a patient of mine that her and her husband could not have children. See, this is why you got to be careful about generalizing.
Well, I'm not generalizing. I mean, I was in a foster home, and the people were wonderful. So I'm a perfect example of the opposite. But still.
Hey, listen, I understand, Bob. I understand it can be done for financial reasons, and it's a sad fact that abusing a child physically or emotionally, as far as I'm concerned, is a crime comparable to murder, and maybe worse because you ruin a life. Bob, let me just throw a little politics in here just for a second because it'll kind of reflect something about our society. When the President of the United States takes time to berate a 16-year-old girl who obviously has a brilliant 16-year-old girl who admittedly has Asperger's, extremely intelligent and very vocal and extremely verbal and maybe angry, okay, and takes his time as President of the United States to berate her and tell her she has an anger problem. A girl who's standing up for the environmental changes in our society has an opinion, a strong opinion, that when the President of the United States takes time to do that in the public arena and does not get loudly condemned by every member of his party, that tells you where we're at as a culture.
Well, it does. And you know what it says? It says even less about the president and more about the 30% of this country, or 35% of this country that thinks what he did is okay.
And the 50-something members of the Senate, almost 200 members of the House, they've lost their souls. We will not have collective outrage if it's politically uncomfortable. So if you want to see where it all stems from, my friend, it stems from tolerating that stuff gives us the inability to go forward as an intelligent, emotionally well-balanced society.
You see, and to be able to talk. Now, I've mentioned some things, okay, in this conversation, for example, Doctor, that the people who support Trump would say, right on, Bob, you're right, but draw the wrong conclusions from it. And that's the point. You know, people draw the conclusions that are convenient from them. Just because the liberals have screwed up some things with their good intentions doesn't mean that we should call them names, doesn't mean that we should eviscerate them. What it means is we should deal with the problem. And all of a sudden, now liberals, and it must sound like I do it too. Here I am, a guy skewed left most of his life, and I am absolutely wicked towards this, what the left has done to the schools. But that's only because with the best of intentions, they got it wrong, in my view. But we should be working with them. There should be collaboration, not demonizing.
Right, Bob, but let me get back to this issue again.
Yeah.
If we can have the leader of our nation take his time to bring this up, this young girl, then where are the leaders of our country and our local communities going to be able to communicate? Because when you tolerate stuff like that, it reflects on you. And so, if I bring up, when I brought up issues of education and the inner city, I've been attacked by people because I don't say that it's all due to racism. That the reason that blacks and Hispanics don't get good grades or don't get into the best high schools is because of our racist society. That's the answer. It's always to blame, put an ism on it. Right. And as long as we stay there, and we're going to stay there, Bob, because you cannot, if you're a Democrat, you have to say those words. Otherwise, you're going to lose a significant segment of the voting Democratic population. You won't get elected. So what are you going to tell the truth? And would you rather be right or president? That's a great question by Harold Stenson, remember?
And again, Dr. Noah wants nuance. For sure, there's white privilege. For sure, it's easier to be white in our country. Always has been, will be for some time to come. But confusing white privilege because of history and evolution, and I'm not talking about scientific evolution, but the evolution of society, with the notion of white supremacy is insane. And it gets to all of us. Right here in New Rochelle, it's one of the greatest disappointments of my 15 years here, has been the Interreligious Council of Westchester condemning a brand new, qualified, left-leaning superintendent who's only in the job 2 weeks, and say, we're going to be watching you, because she sued New York City to protect her rights. She thought that she was a victim of racial discrimination. And the fact that a religious group is prejudging someone before they're given a chance to do the job shows how far we've come.
Yes. Bob, I really wish that I was more of an optimist as an American. And the one interesting experience I'm having now is teaching at the school where I have such a multi-ethnic population of children, just kids, where I see them getting along well. And I see the power of America is to be in a class with 100 students who are the most diverse group of people I've ever been around. I said, boy, this is America at its best. We have Muslims working with Orthodox Jews. We have Iranians working with Chinese people. We have a black student who's very connected to a Chinese woman. The two of them work together. I say, boy, this is the best of America. These kids got into the school as a meritocracy. They worked very hard. From all cultures they got there, and they're showing me what America should be about. Unfortunately, that's not a representation of what's going on all over this country.
You know why I still have some optimism? Because when you're in the midst of sausage making, when you're in the furnace, you see all the ugliness of it. But even what's going on with impeachment, even though we have one side creating a fake narrative, we have the other side that has some goods, but is also being political about it. But at the end of the day, where the system is beginning to work is this president didn't go scot-free. He didn't just be, there has been some accountability that he finds uncomfortable. At least it's working that much. And hopefully at election time, we'll see where the country stands. I don't know.
God should be listening to, Bob. We need. Sometimes I think we need divine intervention to solve problems that humans can't.
Oh, there is. Did you see what the Secretary of Energy said? He said that this president was sent by God. God is intervening by giving you Donald Trump. You didn't read that? Did you hear
read that and I discounted
what one of the best radio personalities in this city, just through his reputation in the dumper, Mark Simone goes on with that other toad. What's his name? He goes on a Fox show and likens the president's 6-page letter to Nancy Pelosi as equivalent to the Gettysburg Address. I know Mark, and he's a good guy and a great broadcaster, but a lot of people in AM radio feel the need to pander to the hard right, no matter how silly they have to get. And Mark just, Lionel did the same thing. Lionel is a great broadcaster, former libertarian, liberal. But now he's a conspiracy theorist,
Listen, I was yesterday, in the course of my conversation, I had a patient in my dental chair.
Yeah.
And while I was listening to music, the music came on. It was a song by Johnny Cash about grab your gun.
Yeah.
And, so I turned to the patient while we were waiting for an x-ray to come out. And I said, what do you think about guns? And he said, after last night, this was the night of the impeachment vote.
Yes.
Which they had decided to impeach him. After last night, it's clearer than ever that we need our guns. I said, what I don't get the connection. He said, the government, they're coming after the president, and they may come after us. And without our guns, we have no protection. Bob, this guy is a former high school principal. They're coming after us. And we have to have our guns.
Does he watch Fox News all day long?
Listen, my friend, I sometimes wonder whether I'm on the same planet with my fellow Americans, and some of them, even relatives that I have this difficult conversation with. When people have that distortion in their view, we have a real trouble. We have real problems solving any issues in this country.
Well, I still
diversity is wonderful, but not to the point where there's no dialogue. We can have a diversity of opinions, but I'll listen to you, and you can listen to me, and let us think about both issues and have a conversation, not an attack. And so what do I say, Bob, to somebody? I said to the patient, I said, listen, you know what? Let's change the subject. I think we may have some. I want to go back to that.
You should have put a drill down. See, now, if I were going to succumb to the zeitgeist, I would say you should have drilled down to his nerve.
Right.
You like that? What was that movie with with Dustin Hoffman, where they drilled his right down to the. That would be a great torture.
Let me say one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, one last thing. But I did interject something that I think. In this conversation about Joe Biden and what went on with the phone call, unfortunately, there is probably on the other side of the ledger some evidence that Biden's son is not necessarily a choir boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and it's also possible, and probably likely, that he was in the Ukraine at the behest of his father, who got him a good job.
Yep.
And so, if I'm a Republican and I say, listen, maybe Joe Biden is an enabler. Maybe he had a son who was thrown out of the Navy for drug use, a man who had an affair with his dead brother's wife,
nice
a man
kid.
who has a lot of negative stuff about him, and now is making $50,000 a month in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Kid doesn't obviously have a big brain and certainly not much morality. And maybe daddy has some culpability in the fact the boy was there. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that justifies the president doing this, but as you look at this in toto, rather than only through the lens of a Democrat or Republican, that Joe Biden may not have clean hands when it comes to what his son was doing. Now, what you've done there is given ammunition to a guy who's going to do anything to stay in office.
Absolutely.
So you muddle the waters. You should never give fodder to your enemies because they will use it and distort the picture. And so the defense is that the guy was a crook and his father enabled him, and therefore whatever Trump did is explicable. And
see,
maybe
that's where we draw the line, and I know you intend to too. Even if there was, they wanted to dig up dirt on Biden, you're not supposed to use a foreign government to do it.
You're not supposed to use the money of the United States and the foreign aid to do it. You can make a phone call and say, listen, buddy, I heard something about Biden's son. What's going on there? But it should not be tied to the U.S. foreign policy. We're using the power of the government and giving something to a country. That's where it could break the law.
You know what? That kind of nuance is in the American conscience. You know what I always yell and scream about, Doc? When someone does something like Jeffrey Dahmer that was heinous, and in all our guts, boy, that guy deserves to die. And yet when he was killed in prison, people said, well, that's the right thing. That's what they should have done. No, what we should do is what the law requires. How we should behave is what the law requires. And if you want to step outside the law, for example, the one thing I always recommend to people to step outside the law, if someone is beating your daughter and you can't stop it and you, let's say silence him, you have to accept the consequences and you got to go to court and you got to deal with it. But don't deny that you did it. That's all.
Right. Well,
it's, so.
My friend Roy Cohn taught him well. Deny and attack. Deny and attack. Roy Cohn was the master, and his pupil is now president.
The one that gets me tired is the president's obviously done some good things, as all presidents do, but people will use that. They'll say, but look at the good job he's doing. I don't care. I'd rather a president be incompetent the way Bush was, but be a decent human being. I mean, George Bush too was a decent, fine human being who couldn't run a grocery store, maybe. I don't know. I'm being unkind there. I love the guy personally, but he was a terrible president. But at least he played by the rules. That's what America is.
Bob, the argument I get on the other side is that, listen, I've heard this from the gentleman who said about guns. He said, listen, I think this man is despicable. I have no use for Donald Trump. However, I agree with what he does. I agree with the policies we have. I believe we should have closed borders. I believe that people should pay less taxes, or that maybe, I don't know, and the economy's doing well. And so what happens is,
so do I.
On one side of the ledger, Bob, there are people that believe that he's effective in carrying out the policy.
That's not America. Do you know the most successful leader of Germany for about 4 years was Adolf Hitler? So where do we go?
I know. My friend, if you are essentially a flawed human being, sooner or later you're going to cause a catastrophe. Mm-hmm. Okay, when Putin, an obviously enemy of the West, says that Donald Trump is being railroaded, when you got to say, "Holy cow, this is." How he kills with praise. This tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, I know.
That
but
Putin, by the way. Putin announced that he's going to eliminate the law that prevents him running for 2 terms. You know that he wants to be there forever. So you cannot help but think that the President Trump looks at these guys that don't have to go through re-elections, don't have to deal with the press, don't have to deal with criticism. He's envious of those people because they have power that he doesn't have. And the most important thing about this process is, if we're not willing to draw a line in the sand, what's acceptable and not acceptable by a president, then we are going down a path that can have no good endings.
Well, what I prescribe, and it's a course I used to teach about this, words are sometimes inadequate or confining. And here's my point. What people don't realize when they say what your patient said is, because I agree with the 3 things he said. Less taxes, if the president at least is addressing immigration at the border. But if you want someone who can do these things despite our system, what you are saying is you no longer want our system. That's what you're really saying. What you're really saying is you want an authoritative form of government and you no longer want a Republican form of democracy, but yet you wrap yourself in the flag and say, I love America. You don't love America then. You want something else.
Yeah, I understand, Bob. And remember, I brought up before on the radio about the Kissinger biography.
Yeah. The
man who went to Germany after the war and found that a large number of Germans still supported Hitler.
Of course.
Despite the destruction of the country. So you're right, Bob. Bob, if people are not willing to examine their viewpoints and examine the actions of others in a kind of objective way, we get is non-evidence-based decisions. And I brought it up about medicine and education. It should be evidence-based, but it is not.
Right.
It is emotional-based decisions.
It is. And, you know, for those who call the president Machiavelli, they've never read The Prince. He said, yes, a president or a prince should be feared. A president, it's nice to be loved, but it's better to be feared. However, it's not good to be hated. And they didn't read the whole
That's what
book.
Machiavelli said. Machiavelli said that. It was interesting.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, that's true.
Anyway, sir, thank you. It is always a pleasure, Doctor. I won overtime because it's so wonderful to have you on our airwaves, and you're not teaching today. Dr. Victor Sternberg, he will be making a return soon enough. Politics in Your Health, we can't live without your show, Doctor. Have a wonderful Hanukkah. Have a wonderful Christmas. My best to you and your entire family, sir.
Same to you, Bob, and all the wonderful listeners on your show.
All right, take care. That slams the lid on things for today. You've been listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone here on Radio Westchester, the station at the New Rochelle train station. You can listen in every day from 6 to 9 or 10. We're changing our schedule a little bit to get ready for the new year. We will keep you informed. You can listen live, of course, from 6 to 9 or 10 on RadioWestchester.com, MyTuner Radio, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope. You name it, we're on it. Oh, did I mention YouTube? Our sponsors today, thank you. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. You got to get busy. Remember, you've only got a few days left until Christmas. I want to thank our special sponsors today. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. And, of course, our friends at United Hebrew. They brought you all the weather today exclusively. United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. It's shining out. We're going to get up to about, the sun is, that is 33 today. We want to thank Vince, Janelle, Steve Callis, Jake. We'll be holding Jake accountable, and on Monday, we'll go over his picks. Dr. Victor Sternberg. Monday, as you know, we're joined by George Latimer and Bob Cox and a number of others. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see everybody on Monday.